Michelle is here. All right, I think we have everybody. Let me get the. Okay. So let's do final few things as we go through it, and then we will it's kind of pause it and start with the questions and things that we talked about on Thursday for the project. So what I wanted to tell you, I want to give you the full view of what is happening in terms of business analysis. And then what is the overall end-to-end process as you can think about it. Okay. So if you look at it, right? When we started work, and I'm going to take it as we are going along through the PHN, right? The first thing you got it oriented in terms of what is the problem statement. Okay. As you go through it, right? You try to understand it. What is the business purpose? Why are you even working on this project? The other aspects that typically as a business analyst, you need to know it is, do you have a background in the given problem domain area? Right. So as we talked about the PHN nurse, do you have a little bit understanding of health, HIPAA standards? If not, you go acquire that, right? So you get those things. Once you get that, then you start looking into the problem statement and start working and defining the scope, right? And the way we started defining scopes, first understanding who are the stakeholders, right? And then once you understand the stakeholders, you talk to them, you identify what is the domain or the scope of the overall problem, right? Sometimes you may have that scope clearly articulated into whatever, if there is an RFP or a problem initiation document, right? Which in this case, Harshal said that you need to focus only on a PHN. There are other things will happen in the subsequent phases. So it gives you a bound in which you need to start working it and drilling it down. Once you do that, then you need to formulate the plan about how you're going to go about getting requirements, right? In the process we talked about is you start with the stakeholders, you start building the context diagram, you utilized all of the interview skills, prepare for it, identify who all you're going to interview it, and then you just execute against that, right? And when you start executing it, right, the first thing you do it is starting defining the requirements, whether it's in a story format, process diagrams, and all of those things that you do. Once you do that, you create those all are your deliverables, right? The stories, the requirements document, and so on. Then, depending on the expectations and the size of that, right? They may also talk about it as, hey, as the development team is building the technical implementation plan, they may have questions, right? So you facilitate getting answers to those questions, whether it's from the business stakeholders or your business users or system users, right? Once you do it, as typically, then you support the development implementations. In case of Agile book, right? You will be part of the team working through it, right? So you're not defining every stories beforehand. As you scope it out, increment, you start identifying stories, defining those stories. Okay. Once you finish that, right, you deliver the solution. And one of the things that you involved in those delivering solutions is the user acceptance testing, the performance plans for the systems. And then once it's done, you start looking into repeating the same process for the new project. Okay, so that's essentially a high level how you work it in terms of analyzing business problems. Okay, so we talked about as we went through our right, using Visios, using Microsoft Words, using the tools like Visual Studio, team systems, right? Which is essentially with Microsoft Azure stuff. Okay. So think about it. If I'm a business analyst, what are the key activities I will be doing in a given any day, right? So depending on the phase of the project, if you're working on a waterfall, you will be doing different things. But if you're like it's in an agile world, which most of you will end up like it's having into that space, you need to think about it. What will be your normal sprint, 2 weeks, 3 week cycle will look like, right? The first thing you do it is you prepare it for defining the stories, right? So in a current sprint, you're focusing on the stories for the next sprint, right? Because the current sprint is like should be already understood of what work you're doing it. So you're helping it to stay ahead by defining it more requirements, defining more stories, right? As part of it, you also create like we draw mock-up screens, right? We did it like it's process diagrams. Sometimes you do data modeling. You do it all of those things as you go and working with the team and the product owner. Okay, so that's the refinement process, right? Over the last two and a half session, we talked about taking a story, putting into the requirement, putting a business rules, putting it the needed mock-up screens, identifying where it fits into overall bigger process, who the personas are, and so on, right? So then you start doing it. Once you have all of those requirements, then you go ahead and start like it's building your stories, right? The stories also focused around 3C and a T, right? What is the card? What is the confirmation? And what is the conversation? Okay. So when you talk about story, the card is typically like you start with a one-liner and says, this is the work that I'm going to do it, right? So like you talked about, I'm going to do a patient registration. Well, that's your card. The conversation is what you're like, it's kind of collecting it through all the requirements. The confirmation is something known as an acceptance criteria. So when you originally started stories, right? You had as a user, I do this so that I can perform this task, right? How do you like it's go validate it like it's the story is implemented properly, right? So that's the testable criteria, right? A lot of times it's known as an acceptance criteria. And then you write it that in a Gherkin format, right? How do you know the story is completed and performing is expected? Okay, and we'll talk in a moment about that. And then the last activity that you normally do it is executing acceptance tests. Validating the implementation the team has done it to say, is it working as expected? Now, there is always a question between business analysis and testing, right? So typically business analysts, depending on the roles, right, they may help in testing, but primarily their main role is in a user acceptance testing. So as you go through the testing cycle, right, there will be a quality assurance team members who are working into detail, unit level testing, component level testing, system level testing. But when it talks about the user's viewpoint and acceptance criteria, what we call it is outside in testing, right? So for example, as a nurse, I will log in and make sure system is behaving as expected. Those kind of testing is typically done with the support of the user, business analyst, right? A lot of times you may have a savvy end users, they may support you in those testing, right? But it's important for a business analyst to build a proper set of acceptance criteria because everything is going to get executed against that when you are accepting a system. So again, as I say, your role as a business analyst is going to be much more concentrated on user acceptance testing arena rather than all of the detailed system and functional testing, right? But all of the functional testing is going to be based on the acceptance criteria you write. And so when you talk about a Gherkin format, that's a format in which a lot of times Agile user acceptance criteria are written. It's essentially given what happens into the system, like what is the context, right? When certain action happens into the system, then what is the results that you're expecting, right? So a perfect example, right? When we're talking about the custom creations, right? As a given, I'm logged into the system as a customer, right? So it's giving you context. What is the precondition? I'm logged into the system, right? And then what action I'm gonna do it? I'm gonna click on show me all the products, right? So that's the action I'm taking it. And what is the expected results? Expected results is I should be seeing all the products that is available for me to order it, or it's available in your catalog, right? Now, same thing when you think around the PHN nurse system, right? So you can just say, hey, given that I'm a PHN nurse logged into the system, and when I click on patient registration, then I should see a patient registration form that I can go and log in information about patients and create and register them, right? So that's the acceptance criteria. So depending on what user stories you write it, you may have multiple sets of acceptance criteria, right? Because you may have it, hey, what happens when I click save? What happens when I click cancel, right? You're giving that entire context of the story. So you will have multiple acceptance criteria. And in order for story to be accepted, all of those acceptance criteria need to be tested and need to be working as expected, right? So all of the expectations or observations is in all the then statement. Sometimes you can have multiple then statements, right? Because when you perform a certain link, there may be certain things that you observe it, certain things that may be happening behind the scene. Like it's, for example, right? Like it's for if I want to just say it's, hey, given when I click on a pay for the order, right? Then you should be able to like it's display the systems, collect that information, and then send it to whatever your payment gateway is and get that validation back. Right. So you may have a multiple acceptance criteria, even in given scenario. Okay. So what are normal best practices as a business analyst that you need to think about, right? So whenever you're collecting information and talking to end users for the interview, think around collecting what is the required, what, not necessarily how, right? Because your user may be savvy and they may say, hey, I want to do it this way, this way, this way. It's their solution. You don't want to like it's focus on solution. You want to focus on requirements, right? Also, make sure your documents, when they talk about one requirement at a time, is don't make it so complex that it's hard to interpret, right? Create a set of broken and easily understood statements that could be tested and implemented individually. Okay. Again, everything that you talk about, right? We talked about the 3C, right? Is it complete, consistent, right? All of those things that you need to map it. Make sure every requirement you collected relates to the objective or the problem statement that you're trying to solve it. It stays within the context. Okay. Again, you should be able to identify it as complete, accurate, and testable, right? Because you don't want things to be vague. If you keep it things to be vague, there is no easy way for system to implement, right? If I go and if I'm building a house and if I go to builder and it says, I want to build a house, but I don't specify, do I want a single story, multi-story? Do I want a standalone? Do I want a townhome type of thing? What they're going to build it, it's not what I'm going to expect it, right? So that's why it's important to make sure you complete that requirement and identify that, is it a validate? Can I test it? Right. Okay. If there are verified constraints, right, you need to make it sure you capture it. Like, for example, if they talk about like it's, hey, I want to access the system from anywhere, then you need to make sure to capture that. And if they say, hey, my team's skill is this, therefore you must use this technology, that's a constraint. Make sure you capture that, because that is going to determine how the solution is going to be implemented. Okay. And when you're building a story, right, think it from a customer value point of view, right? Don't just write the story for the sake of story, where you cannot identify what value it's going to be delivered. Because in case of Agile Vault, right, when we talk about incremental delivery in every iterations, the goal is to get something of a value, right? Otherwise, there's no point in doing an Agile, right? You will find a lot of people still say, hey, I need to build a solution. Okay, in the first sprint, I will do it, the database. Second sprint, I will do the screen. Third sprint, I will build the logic. You're doing a waterfall within Agile. So make sure when you do it, you talk about from a customer value. If I do this, what is the thing that they can do it? Right? We talked about the tech solutions, right? Just take a vertical slice. And there are many ways you can take a story and slice it so that there is a value delivered in that. Now, one of the other things that you need to start getting into is, and I don't know if all of you kind of read through the Airflow requirements. There is a priority tag in there. Like, how do you prioritize things, right? So there are multiple techniques, and one of the simplest technique is what is known as Moscow technique. Okay, so you ask when you're talking to your business users and then users, you start talking through it is what are must-have requirements. Okay, because those are prioritization. Must-have, there is no choice. You need to implement that. Then the second category is what I should have requirement. What should system do it? Right? These are second priority. Okay. Then the third thing is what could have done it. What could system do? Right? It is nice to have type of thing, but that is not required for functionally delivering the value or MVP of the system. Right? So you think around must have is your high priority. Should have are your medium priority. Could have requirements are like it's kind of following under principles. It's a nice to have type of thing. It's a low priority. And then the last thing is a wish list requirement. Okay. These are kind of things that your end users throw in and says, hey, you know what? I wish the system can do this also. I wish the system can do this also. But it's not mapping to your problem domain or the primary objective for which we are building the system. When you're doing that, right, this will enable the teams to think about it. Hey, what is the things that is a minimum set of requirements I need to implement? Right. A lot of these things helps it also into the scoping aspect. So when you go and say, hey, it's going to take me 9 months to build a solution, and the business user says, no, we need it in 6 months. At that point, they can say, okay, let's just talk through it. What is the minimum sets you need to requirement? That's where you focus only on a must-have and says, if I have to do must-have, I can narrow it down from 9 months to 5 months. But you will get only this sets of functionality. You will not get it what a nice should have or could have type of functionality. So as you go through your requirement analysis and story capturing, right? Make sure you need to have this kind of conversation. Is this a must-have? Is it something that you've done at a later stage? And this will also help you to identify what stories should be slated in the earlier iterations versus what stories could be done later. Now, then let's put it together, right? So when you think around, right? So waterfall, you pull it together all into documents, right? Because it's a one big thing that you're providing before any development starts. In the Agile world, right? You need to start thinking around, you talk about the stories, but there is a higher construct called epic and even a higher construct called initiatives. So in a bigger companies, like a Chase or Nationwide, when you start with a problem, right? You think around a 2-3 year horizon strategies. Those are like it's defined and documented into initiatives. Okay. Then you drill it down into, hey, what I'm going to accomplish in the next 3 months. Those things are usually grouped 3 to 6 months activities, usually group into what is known as epic, which is a big functional module type of things. Then that talks about what features, right? So epics are typically a lot of times closely related to the features, right? So in PHN, we talked about, I want to do patient registrations. I want to do it in assessments, right? Down the road, I want to, like, it's kind of integrate with the Department of Health for all of the immunizations. Those are features, those are capabilities of the systems. Those are typically grouped into epics, right? And in order to implement that feature, you have many stories underneath it that you have to implement it. So that's how things organize into an Astro 4. What is the big picture? What is my capabilities I'm focusing on? And then you break it down into stories. So when as a developer or when you're refining your stories, you have that connectivity. How does this fit into the bigger problem? Right? Because when you're thinking around stories, it's a very small piece. And if you do not have a good visual of how this fits in the bigger picture, you're going to get off track. You're going to focus more on the wish list that we were talking about earlier. How are you going to stay organized? So that's one way to organize it. And then again, as you go through it, right, some companies will have standards in terms of how do you document the functional requirements, how you document the use cases, how do you do the UI UX mockup, which tools you use it for those page flows, right? What level of details you needed in those mockups. All of those things is usually like it's kind of agreed upon a template. And that's what you typically utilize it. Okay. So this gives you the holistic picture, right? End to end, what you as a business analyst is going to do. Any questions?
Gherkin,
Uh-huh.
would there be more options as compared to Gherkin? Like if you go to a job, there would be more styles, or Gherkin is the only style?
Gherkin is typically it's a primary way the acceptance criteria is defined in most of the places where they're doing an Agile. Because it's become so pretty clear, right? Now, some non-matured organization will just say, hey, just write an acceptance criteria, whatever you feel it, right? Then you can just list it out, all of that. But then it becomes harder to test it. This one gives you from an outside in view point of view, right? So if you're not thinking from outside in, right? Think about as a business analyst, you're not focused on the nitty-gritty of how the system is implemented, right? You're more focused on what should the system do? What should be the behavior? What should be the capability of the system? And this is the most easiest way to do it. That's part of the reason why you're going to see it. This kind of almost becomes a de facto standard in most of the companies.
Yeah.
Some companies may deviate it, but most of where I've seen it, majority of big companies in the projects think and look like it this way.
For our layout purpose, like when we were taught about Azure DevOps, how you start a story and then you have the criteria. Where does this fit in that?
So there is an acceptance criteria segment also into the story, right? So in the story that Harsha was sharing with all of you on Thursday, there was a bottom list of acceptance criteria.
So
If I do this story, how do I validate that this is implemented correctly? Here are the 15 things I'm going to run it against it. And each one is given I do this, right? So think around if I'm implementing a screen, and screen has 5 buttons, like save, cancel, update, edit, like all of those, right? You will have at a minimum, you will have 5 acceptance criteria. If I do it on this screen, what will happen if I take this action? So think about it when is the critical aspect? What all action you're gonna do it as part of that story? And for every action, what should you observe into the system, or what should be the behavior of the system? Each one of them becomes an acceptance criteria. So when you document, right, your story becomes suggestible only when you identify all of the acceptance criteria.
So for example, for the business rules, right? So you have required fields, basically,
Right.
without filling out, you cannot submit, right? So here, for example, given that
Let's say I'm entering demographic data, right? And I don't give a race or address or that, then what system will do it, right? System will probably give an error to show it that, hey, you should enter it like this.
Correct.
All of those becomes an acceptance. Any action sort of business rule that needs to be implemented.
Yeah.
That essentially triggers your acceptance criteria.
No perspective, when business analyst collects the business requirements, like we did the practice with Russia, this goes in right below it and then it goes to the tester. Is that how it works? So the
It-
tester works and then we put.
No. So this is part of your story refinement, right? So even before the development it started, when you're like, it's putting together all the requirements,
Mhm,
remember, like, what did I say? 3C and a T.
mhm.
The testable is part of it. This is the testable. What will behave it when I test this thing,
Got it.
right?
Mhm,
So for example, if you have non-functional requirement that, hey, system should respond within the 2 seconds, right? So then you identify, given that as a user, I'm logged in to submit an order, right? When I click on submit order, then I should see order is created within 2 seconds from my click. That becomes an acceptance criteria so that you can validate it.
So then the developer looks at all this and then he or she will. develop
Precisely.
everything. And then after he or she's done with that, do we again test that system?
Yeah, so they are testing their own components testing, system testing, integration testing. But this testing,
Mhm.
as a user, they need to do it, or you as a business analyst supporting user will do this. Right? Because think about it, you will not sign off that this system is working as expected unless all of this passes. If one of them fails it, you know the system is not working as expected. So you need to certify that system is working as expected.
Yeah, in every business rule, right, you should have acceptance criteria. Okay, now this is not technical, right? Here it doesn't say where to click. I mean, it does say a little bit on the product claim
All right.
because of the design, but focus is on what should be the behavior.
Behavior,
Of
right?
the system.
That's what it is,
From the
right?
user standpoint.
What are the set of observable consequences on that? Now, what you're gonna see it is nowadays, like it's in, when you go into the testing, there is an automated testing component, right? So a lot of times they utilize the Gherkin format to build their automated testing, something known as test-driven development. So essentially, is you start with, when you want to build it, you start with this test. What test I need to, that's in order for system to behave. So when you define as a business analyst, all of those conditions, the development starts from that point. It says, I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna implement a system for that. And as you do it, that's how the test-driven development happens. So that's make sure all of the system has an automated capabilities, because as you go in Agile world, right? As you're delivering it incremental value every sprint, at some point, it's not feasible to do the manual testing. So the concept is, why not just start the build, test before you write the system, and essentially it becomes an automated testing. So it's a practice that a lot of companies are implementing as what is known as test-driven development or behavior-driven development, right? So Harshal talked about what it should be the behavior. And based on that behavior, how I'm going to build a system. That's a concept. That's why it's an important that acceptance criteria are defined clearly against everything that is expected from the system. Okay. Any other questions online?
This acceptance criteria will be written before stories, right?
No, that's part of the story.
Part of the story, because we write like story, business rules, and then those things, right?
Right. So think
And-
about, right?
Mhm.
As part of requirement, first you need to understand what needs to happen. That is what your wireframe, what is your requirements are.
Uh-huh,
Then you should say it is, okay, if everything is implemented,
uh-huh.
what I'm gonna run it in order to validate that this is implemented as expected. And that's what the acceptance criteria are, right?
Okay.
So it is a
Mhm.
part of the story that you need to write it, but typically you do that after you understand the requirements and wireframes and a process diagram. Then that drives it, what all stories, what all acceptance criteria you write for that particular story.
Okay. Okay. So in that story, we write like as PHN, I can enter so and so, so I can provide or I can like see the forms like that, and then business rules, and
Right.
then
Yeah, so think about it, right? In the requirements in the stories, you laid it out how the form should look like it.
Mm-hmm.
What business rule needs to be implemented, right? You're putting all those description that, hey, my social security number is required. All of the data that I transferred needs to be HIPAA compliant. That means it needs to be secure, right? So you do
Mm-hmm.
all of those things. So that becomes your requirement. Once you put all those requirements, then you need to say it's okay, how do I know that this is going to be implemented successfully? So what should be the behavior a user should see it when they click on this part of the form, or when they do this, or when they enter this data? That is
Oh,
what becomes an acceptance criteria. And that
okay.
becomes a part of your story. So
Okay.
from a development team point of view, they're getting a requirement and they are just saying is that, hey, what it looks like it when that requirements is implemented successfully. Right?
Uh,
Let me give you an example, right? So we talked about the building a house, right?
mm-hmm.
So you talk about, hey, I wanted a two-story house. I want the master bedroom upstairs. I want the kitchen downstairs. I want the dining area to be a left of the kitchen, right? You define all those requirements. And then you say, what is my acceptance criteria? I'm going to say, and when I enter the house and kitchen is in front of me, then I should see a dining area on my left, right? That's an acceptance criteria. That's the simplest way, right? Nothing to do with the
Yeah.
system, right? That's the
Okay.
behavior. What I'm
Got it.
expecting it out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can exercise, pick your story and write it and we can review it.
Right.
So that way it makes it a lot more clear. for
Right.
us, Right?
So I'm just curious, in terms of layout, when you're working on an actual project, if we were to take this example, like Herschel said, first we focused on the registration bit, then it went to assessment bit. So in a real life scenario, how does it look like when you have like so many user story, like say, for example, we were using the DevOps.
Right.
So then you have that. Then when you start new, you keep adding. on to
Right.
that.
Right.
And then
So it's not in the same story. You add new stories.
New story.
okay.
You keep adding in new stories. Think around, you have multiple cards, right? So I talked about high level constructs, right? Initiatives and epics and the stories, right? So typically, most of you will work at the epic level, like it's right. The strategy team is usually working at the initiative level. So at the epic level, let's say I want a patient registration, right? And in order to, that becomes your epic. And it says, okay, what do I need to do for patient registration? Should be able to log in. I should be able to do this. Remember, you draw a story map,
That's what.
all those stories, right? That story map, each story is a card. You need to have a conversation in terms of it. If I implement this story, what is the requirement? What should it look like? What are the acceptance criteria? That is called a story refinement. That is where you as a business analyst play a role. Once the story is defined, right? The conversation between the product owner and team, you should facilitate it is, do you understand what needs to be implemented? Then the development team talks about it and says, how are we going to implement this? And it says, okay, it's going to take me 2 days to implement that story, let's say, right? Then you said, okay, your sprint iteration is 2 weeks. This one is going to take you 2 days. Let's talk about another stories that you will implement. Let's start refining, right? And then before you start the sprint, you said, okay, you have enough work that allows you to do the 2 weeks. That becomes part of your sprint iteration, right? While they're working on that, you forward look at it. Okay, once this 2 weeks is done, what do you need to work on it? Let me go refine that.
Yes.
Right. So it's a continuous process. Think about that when you do it. That's why you're as a business analyst, you're embedded into it. You have a bigger picture, and then you're helping them to refine it into smaller pieces, and then connecting it using those prioritization technique I talked about Moscow, and then helping them to identify what goes into that section.
And it'll be right to assume, since you're working in an agile environment, the sprint has to be complete or the iterations have to be complete before, like, say, Herschel suggested the assessment. So this has to be.
Right,
properly
so
done.
you break it down, right? So like it's depending on how big the functionality or feature is,
Mhm.
sometimes it may take you 3-4 iterations to complete that. That's when the epic comes in, right? That's where it's a 1 to 2 quarter. I have an assessment feature. Well, it's gonna have probably 100 stories. I may be able to do only like it's 10 stories a sprint. It's gonna take me 10 sprints to implement. Right? Then that's to talk about capabilities. Now, sometimes you have multiple teams working on it. Right? So when our multiple teams are working on it, essentially then you slice it and says, okay, you do this part, you this, or you may have a one team working on assessment, other team may be working on patient registration, another team might be working on other capability, right? So essentially, that's how you organize it. That's where the story map comes crucial, right? It says, I have multiple teams, what all stories I'm implementing, who is taking what stories, and then there will be an integration at some point, right? Because the login, everybody requires you login, whether I do a patient assessment or whether I do a patient registration. How does those fit in together? Which team takes it login? At that point, how they coordinate with the other team. All of those things is essentially driven off from clarity that you provided in your requirements and the stories. Right. That's why it's a crucial, right? So when we talk about story writing, right, it's a full-time job because you need to think around all of those things. You're constantly interviewing it. You're helping the team to understand what needs to be built, right? And you're crisply clearing the acceptance criteria. And actually you review the stories. Once you write the stories, you review with the team as well as with the product owner and sometimes with the business user says, is this what you are expecting? Right? Making it validation before that gets implemented.
Like we were reviewing it.
Right.
Does it make sense?
So when we're doing a story mapping, right, asking question, partial as a user says, no, it should not be done this way, it should be done this way. Now you have a clarity. So now you can guide the team with a better clarity in terms of what it should be, what should be the flow.
How do I know that this story takes like 2 weeks or this story take only 1 week like that? How do I know that, like, to give 1 or 2 story for a sprint?
You don't do that. That's a team's responsibility, right? So
Okay.
you identify all the requirements, the team looks at it and says, okay, if I have to implement this, it's going to take me this much time.
Mm,
Right? Let's think about like same way, like it's when you're building a house. You don't define all the requirements and say to a builder, I want it done in 2 weeks. Right? You tell them, hey, I want to do all of these things. And the builder tells you, okay, if you need all of this thing, I'm going to take this much time to get it done.
okay.
Yeah,
Mm,
Right.
under the stories for development. Like I
They
did
talk,
this-
they do an implementation plan
Yeah.
for that story and says, okay, it's going to take me all this task, all those things needs to work together in order for this to work. And it's going to take me this much time.
mm,
And then based on that, that's when your product owner and the team collectively decide what we will do it in this iteration.
mm,
Okay, and what will go into the next iteration, right? So your product owner helps them to identify what is the priority. And a lot of those things is driven based on what you identify, what are must-have things,
must have, should have.
right? So that priority helps them, and then you identify what work I'm going to take it in the next sprint.
Yeah.
Mm,
And it also helps you to understand it, what
Mhm.
work to find for the next sprint.
And
Okay.
you don't create like a giant story. Okay, you always want to break it down into
Smaller pieces.
Basically, small items.
And again, each item should have a value.
Yeah.
You just don't stick it out, right? Part of it is that you wanted to make it usable at the end of the story.
Yeah, you
Mm.
don't just for the save button.
Right.
So you create a story, something.
For the function.
Mhm. Thank you.
Anything else? I want to make sure you understand, we talked about many things, how everything fits together. This is how everything fits together. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So that's what I wanted to make sure, like it's before we wrap up today, you have understanding of how everything gets it together. Okay,
Mhm.
now, Harshal, you want to take a 5-minute break and then get into their
Yeah.
questions
I think
review?
what we can do is, let's have them work through one acceptance criteria.
Right, as
Basically,
part of
acceptance
whatever
criteria
story they
is,
worked
right?
on.
So pick one of your stories, write the acceptance criteria. Just make sure you pick the story that you think is complete, or at least what we provided feedback, you revise it, right? Let's give it a start on the acceptance criteria.
Okay.
Right? See what you guys come up with.
So let's say it's a 940. So we want you to do it is go into the tool itself.
Yeah.
Document there also within the description. At the bottom, you put it acceptance criteria, define all the acceptance criteria you think it is required for that story, right? We'll give you 20 minutes.
Yeah, and there is actually in the DevOps, there is a section for acceptance criteria
Right.
itself. Okay, in the DevOps, you.
You should be able to log in and then
Yeah.
do that.
You just write the acceptance
Right.
criteria.
So it is 9:42. We'll give everybody 18 minutes, 10 o'clock.
10, let's give.
Okay, so we'll give you 30 minutes.
30, yeah.
And then we'll do a 10-10. Let's do it. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave the acceptance criteria format up here for you. I'm gonna pause the recording. I'm gonna stop sharing. So who wants to go first? Okay, so you wanna share your screen? And talk through it? Let me make sure.
Hopefully this time I'll be able to share. If not, you're here to help.
Yeah, we'll work through it.
This is exactly what happened last time.
Okay, you stop sharing. Let's have somebody else go and then let's take a look at your stuff.
Sure.
Well then. So who wants to go? Girija, you wanna go?
Yes, I'm doing sharing now.
Okay,
Did you enable Sarah? Oh, yeah.
yeah,
You guys are
Or-
able to see, right?
yeah, we can see it.
Okay, this is a section C. This is a,
Okay, can you zoom in a little bit more?
yes.
So you haven't documented yet in the Azure
No.
DevOps.
No, I cannot like go into the Azure DevOps. Like
Okay.
I tried with multiple Gmails, I did everything, but cannot like go into.
Okay, no problem. Let's just go with that. If you can
Okay.
zoom in a bit more, it's an easier to see it.
Okay. Okay, so,
Go ahead. Walk us through your story.
okay.
And then through the acceptance criteria that you have built it.
Okay, so as a PHN, I can enter section C part of initial assessment, so I can provide better treatment or services. This is markup. This is the set name, UID, section, urgent needs or risks. So this is a drop-down box and has checkboxes. The drop-down box will look like this once they enter it. Other risk factors and comments and steps taken. And for that, here, user will have ability to enter name. It's only in alphabetical order and space only allowed. CID number, 7-digit numerical values. User will have ability to check one of the drop down boxes, and the list contains 3 risks: suicidal, homicide, self-mutilation. And user have ability to check one or more from the checkboxes. For checkbox options for urgent needs and risk, in comment section, ability to write down and lines will be added if needed. Steps taken, the same lines will be added if needed. Acceptance criteria, given that I logged in the system as a PHN, when I click initial assessment form, I see section C of the form, then I should enter all the information during assessment in section C.
Okay, now, is this the only acceptance criteria? Because think about it, you have multiple business rules, but you have only one acceptance criteria. So you need to have acceptance criteria to address all of the rules, right? So for example, what if user doesn't add a numerical value for CID number? What should system do?
Oh, okay.
So you
Uh-huh.
have to give all of those as a acceptance criteria.
Oh,
So you
all
need,
the business rules is accepted, one of the acceptance.
this is only one, right? So this is a
Okay.
big, but then you need to have each individual detail also. So you will have multiple sets of given, when, then, one for each one of those business rules.
Oh, okay. So I have to write all five. For all five business
Well,
rules,
there
I
could
have
be
to write.
more than five, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
what is the acceptance criteria for each one of them, right?
Hmm.
Take a look
So
at
if I enter number, if there is numeral in the name, then it should say like error message and CID number.
Right. So for example, right? So you
Mhm.
have ability to check the box for the urgent needs. And if urgent needs it, then you need to address the steps action taken, right? So you need to have that also. If that checkbox is checked, when that checkbox is checked, then required information is for the added additional steps.
Oh, okay.
So you have to think about all of the acceptance criteria from a user's point of view in
Mhm.
order to implement the story, right?
positive and negative.
So what all conditions should be true, what all conditions should be prevented, right? So in other words,
Mhm.
if they put it like it's kind of alphanumeric value for CID number, what should be the
Mhm.
system? What should users?
Okay. Hello.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I edit it now. Thank you.
So go ahead and add all of those stories
Mhm.
as um, go ahead and then stop sharing it. Let
Yeah,
have
thank you.
free or Kushal go first.
I can go ahead and pull mine up. Let's see. Hmm. Okay, great. So my story is for the daily activities. So as a PHN, I want to log my daily activities in the system so I can meet compliance records, document service delivery, support reimbursement, and maintain accurate case records. And then for the business rules, I broke it down by sections on the daily activity log with the date selection, service type, location of service, and then time spent mile entry, notes, and then the ability to view and edit logs. And then I did the same for the acceptance criteria as well. So for the date selection, given the PHN is on the daily activity logging page, when the PHN clicks on the date field, then a calendar widget should appear. Given the calendar widget is open, when the PHN selects a date, then the selected date should populate in the date field. And then given the PHN is completing the form, when the PHN attempts to submit without selecting a date, then the system should block submission and display the message, please select date.
So, Kushal, couple of questions here. Do you have any business rule in terms of what date range they should be able to select from it? So for example, if I'm trying to do it a daily act and I put it for a future date, should the system allow? Or if I put
Okay.
it something which is 4 months in past, should system allow?
Okay. Yeah, I didn't think about that. I ideally we wouldn't want that happening, right? Ideally we would want a date range there.
Right? So you need to put those as
Yeah,
a business,
okay.
and you need to put those as your negative acceptance criteria. What if I try
Okay.
to the date in the future and try to submit it? What should the error message be?
Okay. Okay. So would it be beneficial for them to just have like a week range, like they can only select
It's
dates of that week, or?
So it drives it back into the user requirements, right? So you
Right.
should have a conversation and say, hey, what are the valid ranges of the date? And then you decide how you want to display it, right?
Right.
So the
Okay.
most important aspect here is what and what should be the behavior of system when that
Mhm.
thing falls outside that range.
Okay.
How you
Okay.
implement it, whether you show a week or show a day, that's a
Mhm.
solution you should not worry about as a business analyst
Uh-huh.
that getting implemented.
Okay. Okay.
Focus on what aspects of those things.
Okay. Sounds good. So I would be focusing mainly on the user requirements of, hey, what range do we want them to be able to select from?
Right.
Okay. Excellent. And then for
Hey, when that date is outside that range, what
Mhm.
should be the behavior of the system?
Okay, and that would plug into our acceptance criteria that when okay, okay, sounds good. So I'll do that as well. And then for the service type selection, given the PHN is on the daily activity form, when the PHN clicks on the service type field, the drop-down list of predefined service types should appear. And then in the business rules, I put predefined areas. So initial assessment, treatment coordination, reassessment, family education, referral support, and case documentation. And then
Now, so if you're
Mhm.
specifying those as the
Mhm.
service type, right? Then I would go back more into the acceptance criteria
Mhm.
and I'll be more specific, right? It's not
Mhm.
necessarily predefined, right? But which
Mhm.
predefined? It's predefined as identified into the description above,
Okay.
right? We
So
need
what
to
I
be clear in terms of what.
So let me add one comment here. I think because we have the field level acceptance criteria, right? So it needs to be a little bit higher level. I would say from the, because you already have defined all the rules, right? Business rules,
Mhm. Mhm.
all the details, like these are five
Mhm.
items, spreading the list and so forth. So
Mhm.
I see you have like individual level, right? They do this
Right.
action. You should do it. You should keep it a little bit higher level.
Well, you need both, right?
Okay.
You need high levels
In the
too.
business rules, yes, you need to have more details, right? But then
Mhm.
here I would, because otherwise you will have like a 50 acceptance criteria.
Ah, okay. Okay.
So what you should do it, what should happen, how the system should behave at a
Right.
higher level? Because we know
Mhm.
how to select, right? I mean, you should focus on what major action happens.
Mhm. Mhm.
Calendar is fine.
Yeah.
Calendar, I see it is perfectly okay that you should keep it
Put the
for the date
values.
range and those things. But
Mhm.
just focus on like a high level, like if I don't enter certain, basically anything, what should happen? It should show me error, instead of putting down the individual error messages, you can do that. Just keep it at a high level, they should be able to enter if they fill out valid information.
Mhm.
All these different, so you can combine certain acceptance categories,
Yeah.
like select this date activity, select this date, select this.
Service type.
Location, service
Right.
type,
Oh, okay. Okay.
be able to create a new,
Yes. And this is-
So I can better like standardize like if a point on the form is missing, right? Like these two specifically here,
Right.
right? If this is missing, an error message will appear. So I can standardize that for more high level and say, you know, if a field is missing, the form cannot submit and an error message will appear.
Right.
so that's what the acceptance criteria. The business
Oh,
rules.
okay.
Right.
Okay, you can have
Oh,
all
okay.
the stuff, but you don't repeat the same thing in the acceptance criteria. Just keep it at a
Okay, that makes sense.
user, it's a user behavior. This
Mhm.
was for a business user, right?
Mhm.
What the tester will do, or tester or QA, right? They will actually have a lot more details. What you are saying here.
Right.
The tester will.
It's a
write
white
all
box
the-
testing versus a
White
black box. You have to think about black box. What is, I don't know under the implementation.
Nothing about.
I want to understand is what should be the system behavior.
Mhm.
Little bit higher.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay. So yeah, reformat it to more high level. That way, it's more standardized and include some of these things in the acceptance criteria rather than the business rules.
Individual, right, yeah.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good. So I'll focus on that as well. So
Now,
then that
business
would
Business rule is okay to break it down by field level
Yeah.
because you need that level of detail for development team to understand and implement it.
Okay. It's
This is
in the acceptance
more on
criteria
the
that we don't need to.
of the systems and the users.
Okay. Okay. Okay, great. So I'll make those changes. So that would then change up some of the acceptance criteria in terms of like information missing. But I do have this one as well. We're given the PHN selects a primary service type. When the PHN optionally selects a secondary service type, then both selections should be recorded with the activity log.
Yeah. And combine this given when then, so that there are.
Multiple scenarios
Yeah,
within
and
that.
I'll send you guys a recording for what we teach in the automation test, either a one full session of 3 hours. There are different variations of given when then, you can just use that, watch it. Okay, and so that way it gives you more idea on how to write this thing.
Okay, perfect.
Right, but you are on the right step,
Yeah, yeah.
crucial, right?
Mhm, mhm.
That's right. You just need to abstract a little bit higher level.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I'll focus more on higher level. Okay,
Okay.
great.
All right. Let's go to, thank you. And then, like, it's Jayshree, if you can just go ahead and share yours.
I just like on my homework is not done about this DevOps thing. So just my form section G, it needed like medical history of the patient and the current status. So I just took like I just wrote like two things like given that I am logged in the system as a nurse, when I select section G of a form, I should be able to fill medical history and current status of patient. And for the second, like for primary physician, when I enter his name, I should get his phone number and the details of the patient's last visit details on the system.
Right, so Jayshree, I think it's you need to spend a little bit more time getting your stories defined, right? And then that will drive, like this is just only two, but you don't know without knowing the business rules within that, what additional
Yeah.
thing, right? I would also like it's kind of see it if you can do it, screen markup, the business rules, the specific requirements.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So if you can start, let's go try to figure it out. Yours. Why is
Sir,
going-
I did like 2 acceptance criteria for my business rule. Shall I share it? I just want to check whether it's right.
Yeah, go ahead and share it.
Mhm.
This is the first time we've been doing
Girija, just give us a moment, okay?
Yeah, sure. Wait.
First time scared, I don't know.
Oh, she's sharing. All right, yes. All right, go ahead, Girija. Girija, you there?
Yeah,
You're
sorry.
muted.
Yeah. So then the acceptance criteria given when it is name where sorry, when I enter name in alphabetical character and spaces, that's okay. You can go to the next one. If not, the system should show error message. And the second one is CID number. CID number, if it is 7-digit number, if it is yes,
Hang
if
on,
not,
hang on. Girija, hang on.
uh-huh,
The second one, right? You're
uh-huh,
trying to put multiple if conditions in there. That's not how you write it down,
okay,
right? So you're like,
Should
it's,
be either separate or.
you need to keep it separate. Either you can enter 7-digit CID number, right?
uh-huh,
Or it says, hey, if I try to enter more than 7 digits, it
uh-huh,
should be error message. Third condition would be is if I try to enter alphanumerical value, then it should give me error message. What you're trying to do is you combine everything into a one. You can't, you have to break it down.
okay.
Take a
So
look at,
this part alone into two criteria, right?
right, every unique condition should be a separate criteria.
Okay. Hmm. Okay. Got it now.
So,
They enter 7-digit number, they can pass on to the next step of the form. If not, then again, given when, then. If alphanumerical values are entered in CID number, then the system should show error message.
right, so
Okay.
what I would probably suggest is
Uh-huh.
take a look at the video that Harshal is gonna send it,
Okay.
and that will help you
Uh-huh.
as you go through it. It'll
Okay.
help you understand it is what are different variations you can apply it into given when then.
Uh-huh.
So,
Okay. Sure. Thank you.
If you can pull up my email, it should be there. Email should be logged in the IE should be over.
this one?
Yeah, there you go. Two messages are from there.
One is from Michelle.
Yeah.
Is this the one? No.
The new one, yes, no, I just
She
sent
just
it,
send it, so it should, if you refresh it, I think it should show up.
and it must be my new account that I created just for the testing, Shana Acharya 100. No, that is.
So this one is still like it's up here somewhere. So hasn't come through it yet. No.
Yeah.
I don't see it. The last one was at 6:43.
No, that was my home.
Yeah. Did it go through it?
Let me check.
Don't see it yet.
You know, why don't you go ahead with something else, just make sure that it goes through from here.
All right.
I don't want to waste it.
So Herschel, do you want to take like break, 5-minute break?
Yeah, let's take a five
Right.
minutes, five.
Let's take a 10-minute break, like 7-minute break till 10:40. And we'll get started. All right, I'm gonna pause the recording. Okay, and then if you want to,
Sure. So I selected the exercise where I worked on I am a PH nurse, and I'm trying to fill out the demographic piece for patient registration. My business rules, for the following fields, user is required to put in a value, child's first name, and I listed down a list of business rules that we've gone the other day in class with Herschel. Do you want me to go through this, or do you guys still?
just walk through it, just like everybody
Sure,
did. Just
sure.
walk through at a high level
Sure.
and then focus more on acceptance criteria.
So for the following fields, user is required to put in a value for certain things that are listed out, like the first name, last name, social security, all the other stuff. If any field is empty, we're expected to display an error message. Users should have the ability to add more than one address for the child. User is required to fill at least one parent legal guardian, and if they need, they should be able to put in two more. The state field should be a drop-down menu with the.
Hang on.
Sure.
So that number 4, help me understand. There is a 1 is minimum required,
That's right.
and then you're saying add more than 2 if needed.
That's correct.
So you're just saying is that they can add as many as you want, but a minimum required is at least 1.
Minimum is 1, and they can add more if they need it.
So then you want to describe
More
this
than-
little
yes,
bit that,
yes.
because the way it is describing it is, they can add more than 2
You're right.
instead of 2 more.
No, you know, when I think about it, I think they can add.
As many?
As many, right? Because
Right, then
you wouldn't know that-
then you don't need this more than 2. All you want to do it is at least 1 required, and they can additional if needed. That is what you should do
Yes,
it,
traditional, yeah, that's,
right?
Okay.
So again, it's playing with the word,
yes, yes.
but
yes.
the interpretation could be completely different.
Makes
okay.
sense.
Go ahead.
The state field should be a drop-down menu with a list of all the US states. Users should be able to select one.
Okay.
Zip code should be a masked field to accept only 5 digits. Now, after a
So-
conversation, I will change the masked bit.
Even the 5th one,
Mhm.
right? All you should do is that user should be able to select a state field. Don't talk about whether it's a drop down or that,
Okay.
because it could be implemented differently. It could be it's a drop down or allow me to type it and it'll validate against it.
But wouldn't it reflect the mock? For example, if one mock, I've tried to.
But that's a mock screen that you're showing it, right? That's not a business rule. The business rule is
Just give them the.
give them what is the rule, not necessarily how the rule is going to implement it. Right? Mock-up screen is you're drawing a layout. Things could still change in mock-up screen. Business rules should not be changing.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Then child birthday should be a field that accepts the format month, 2-digit, day, 2-digit, and year, 4 digits.
That's perfect.
Social security should be a field that accepts 9 digits.
Yep.
Ethnic group, again, should give the ability to the user to select one of the ethnic groups from a given list.
Okay.
Ohio residency and sex fields should use checkbox format where they select one option,
Okay.
one of the whatever options given. Phone number should be.
Now again, going back to it, right? For number 10, you're actually telling them how to do it, right? Instead of saying that the required information is the Ohio residency and the patient sex information. That's all you should leave, not necessarily checkbox or that. That could be a visual in your screen markups, right? But at the end of the day, as I said, screen markups could still change. Because they could do it instead of checkbox, it could be a radio box. That's what you needed, right? Because sex can have multiple things. It should be one or the other.
Or it could be a drop down as well.
Right.
Someday.
Right.
So you're just letting them know that this is the capability.
This is the information that is required. How it is pulled in is one view is given in a markup. That could change, but the business rule is not going to change.
Yes. Okay, then phone number field should be a field that accepts 10 digits.
Right.
Then let me just rework based on what user has to select one of the followings.
Right.
Okay, they should be able to save the information and cancel when they hit cancel. I mean, not hit cancel, but when they should have the capability of canceling. When they cancel, all the information should be clear from the form.
Right. Now, again, when you do save, here's the other question. Are you expecting the information saved and cleared out from the form? so that they can enter new patient's information or new data, or save and the form should still stay filled. That's part of the things that you need to think about, because that will be your acceptance criteria. What behavior user will see it when they click on the save.
Otherwise, developer will ask you, what should happen.
Right.
On this after, once they save it, when the user should go.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's like, you can
Right.
always define it,
Okay.
or clarify with the developers.
Sure.
Okay.
So the acceptance criteria I started with, given that I'm logged into the system as a public health nurse, when I select a patient registration form, then I should be able to see the form when I can feed all the data.
Okay, so here I have one question.
Sure.
Now, are you creating a new one? Or are you creating and editing existing?
No, this is my new patient.
So you should say basically when I create a new patient, because this is what the user will do, right? When there is a patient registration form, they may not understand because it doesn't even exist right now.
Oh, okay.
Right, so it should be is when I select add a new patient or register a new
So
patient.
when I create a new patient, simply, right? How
Right.
they do it, whether they go to the patient registration form or they click on
Okay.
something, that doesn't matter,
Yes, new
right?
patient. Okay, got it.
We are focusing on the user behavior, system behavior, how the user will do it.
Got it.
Not exactly what sequence, but
Uh-huh.
Right,
what action they are taking.
Okay, so then.
think around outside in view. Right, I may not know everything about system, but how would I go and do it?
So then based on that, then the second would change to, given that I am.
Filling out a new patient
Yes,
registration
filling
Right.
out-
information for while creating a new patient, right? You
Right.
can
Got
say
it.
that.
You're filling out
Yeah.
okay, the patient registration information while creating a new patient. When I miss filling any data,
Yep.
then I should see an error message, please input data.
Okay, now is that sufficient? Or is it gonna be, it says, input data for what field? Is that field should be highlighted in the red, that I missed this field, right? Because if there is 30 fields. And I missed 5,
Mhm.
which 5? Which are mandatory, which are optional, I don't know, right? So I think it's, the structure is there,
Yeah, I
you
see
need to
what
be a
you're-
little
yes,
bit
yes,
more
yes.
specific,
So
right?
then if I work with what the information that you're giving, can I put please input data with an asterisk?
Or required.
Or identify which fields are missing the input data. Right, so it could be, it's like it's either could be an asterisk,
Mhm.
or I get the message, it says, oh, please enter state and address information, whatever it is, right? But that, right, I should see an error message identifying the missing fields where the input data is required, right?
Got it.
So you're not telling them how to do it,
Mhm, but you're saying.
you're
why-
telling us what should be happening.
Given that I'm calling the demographic information for the patient, when I add one address and want to add another, then I should see additional text boxes to fill more information. Is that right?
Okay, so it should not be that, right? So think about it. Right, it's again, it's your language, right? The structure is there, but you need to be careful, right? So I'm adding demographic information patient. When I click on add another address. Because I don't know if one address exists or not, right?
Hmm.
So all you're doing is clicking add another address.
Hmm.
At that time, you should see additional text boxes to fill address information.
So here, what you are telling is, there is already existing address,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And then you are trying to add a new address, is
Yes.
it what it is?
Yes.
Okay, so what you should,
Please
if you
wait.
watch that video, if you watch that
Uh-huh.
video that I just sent you guys, I
Uh-huh.
think it will clear out how you should be writing this.
Even when
acceptance test, even when then. So here you can say that given when I am adding a new demographics or whatever,
Right.
or editing, right, doesn't
Uh-huh.
matter here. When I am working with the demographic information. And there is already one address exists,
Huh.
right? Patient already has one address associated.
Mhm.
When I try to add another address,
Mhm.
then I should see additional, I
Right.
should be able to enter additional address information
Yeah.
by filling out more details.
Okay.
That's what you are saying, right? So
Yes.
you can
Yeah.
have multiple given conditions.
Right, so think about it, right? So when it says, when there is already a one address associated with the patient. And I want to add another,
Yes.
then, right? Because the way this reads it,
Mhm.
I add another one and add another one.
Mhm. I see.
Right.
Yeah, but it is good. I mean, you are thinking in that term, right? Because this should be part of the acceptance criteria.
Yeah.
It should allow you to enter multiple addresses.
Right.
Sounds. The next is given that I'm adding demographic information for the patient. When I skip the parent legal guardian's information, then I should not be able to proceed and be given an error message, please fill out the required information.
Okay,
Given that I'm adding address information, when I select state drop-down tab, then I should be able to see a list of all the US states.
now this one goes back to Herschel's earlier
Reading
comment.
the rules.
This is not the rules, this is actual field information that you're trying to do it. So this is not a good acceptance criteria.
First, that'll be out. So then, does this follow the same category, given I'm filling the address?
Yeah, I think it's you're
Yeah.
appealing here, right?
Okay.
Because it needs to be a little bit higher level.
Right.
Yep.
Because you identified in the business rule, right? That
Mhm.
it has to be one of the 50 states. It has to be, now here's the other questions. Do you want them to accept all of the 50 states, or do you want to, like, it's have default only to the county and the states in which the county? Because you're serving the patients only within that county,
Then you should have that.
right? So again, that's the question you should ask to the business user. Say, do you want to accept? Now, again, it's the address where the patient is residing. The legal guardian could be anywhere in the US. So you want to accept that? Those kind of questions you need to ask it.
Oh, sounds good. Then the other one will be a repetitive.
Right.
form.
But you got the gist, right?
Yes,
How you need to
absolutely.
approach it for those acceptance criteria. Okay. Alright, so I think it's now you guys getting the hang of how you should define the business rules, how you should get the screen markup, what should be your process diagram. How you come to identify what stories you should be doing it, what should be the scope of the stories, right? So that's essentially a bread and butter for a business analyst on a daily basis. Okay. All right, Herschel. Do you know what time Rati? She's probably still at like
So
five.
we can see, but I think we can talk about the project actually.
Okay, So you
Get
wanna-
into the project work and.
talk about that then.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I think the recording is still on, I think. Yeah, the recording is still on.
Okay. All right, so. Okay, so let's talk about the next steps, right? Because the learning wise, I think this is basically, this one was the last topic, the acceptance criteria and summarizing, right? Now, where do we go next, right? I mean, let's talk about it. I think you guys need more practice, right? That's the first thing, because it's, you can always improve with the practice. And your next story will be a lot better than the previous one, right? That's what we want to see from you guys. We'll put in more effort, create the proper mockups, document the proper stories, and in a proper format. In the acceptance criteria, you need to have acceptance criteria, have proper screen mockups, identify all the business rules, and work through that. So here is what I'm proposing. I mean, so going forward, what we'll do is that you guys will continue working on either PHN. I think you guys feel comfortable with the PHN, working with it. So we'll give you that additional modules, basically, work through that. And on Sundays, we'll set up a time to review. Now, if you don't do work, we don't expect you to, I mean, you can still attend, but it's not gonna add much value, right? So. So I would say document the stories in the DevOps, right? All the stories over the week, right? Because we will not have labs, Thursday labs, okay? So going forward, because this is technically supposed to be our last day for the session. But we'll keep the Sundays. Sunday mornings, maybe around 10 o'clock,
Yeah.
10 to 11, right? That's the ideal time for everybody. So you guys will use the same link and log in and make sure you are ready if you are attending, basically. And if nobody shows up at 10, then I'll drop off as well. So just be on time. And we'll review that. We'll provide you feedback and work through that process at this point.
I think the way I would just say it is, the more the practice you will do it,
Mm.
the more the comfortable you get.
Yep,
right? It should almost become a muscle memory.
Yep, that's
So
good.
if you look into it, right, when Herschel and I start looking at it, like, it's not that we're great. It's essentially, we have so much muscle memory into it,
Yeah.
right? So our brain automatically says, hey, when you're defining it a story, are you identifying all the things needed for a developer to complete that, right? The more and more interactions you will have it, the more practice you will do it, now you will start thinking around it in a different way. Right, and that is what is needed. Right? And essentially, like, there's tons of studies done, like, unless you practice it, the knowledge retention goes away right away.
Yep.
It's 80% of knowledge you lose within 3 weeks. Right, so most important thing is it's for you to practice it.
And I think I mentioned to you guys will not find this type of things in any books. So don't try to read any books. There is no books that exist, what we cover in the camp here. This is what we do in the real life, okay? And you do as a BA, you will do as a BA in the real life as well. So more practice, you will need more practice. You can certainly focus on that, and we're gonna get you enough time over a month or two. Okay, if you wanna continue working on 2 months, we'll work with you. Okay,
Oh, thank you.
so but make sure you come prepared on Sundays, because it's a very important time for everyone, right? And you're gonna learn from each other as well, because somebody puts together certain things, and so you will learn from there. So I would strongly encourage you attend on Sundays. For that one. So you guys can work, so for the project work, right? I want to see the user story map, right? For whatever you do, let's if you are working on patient assessment, I want to see the story map for patient assessment. Have a process flow as a high level, right? So those are the things, right? What we give you for the homework, we haven't gone through any of this thing. If you have it today, we can review that, those portion as well. And we can see what you guys are putting. Okay, but you can, let's finish that up, right?
Sure.
Let's finish that up, and if you are done, then as an individual, you can move on to the next topic. So like assessment piece, or there are additional modules as well, like daily activity and other things. You can work through that.
I would suggest that if you're doing it, create a comprehensive dossier.
Yeah.
Right. So create, and I don't care whether it's a Word document, PDF, whatever you select, right? Map all of your processes.
Yep.
Put all of your stakeholders, put your context diagram.
Yeah, just create from scratch, right? Everything together now.
And then link it to, okay, now here are the 10 stories.
Yep.
And then document the stories in Azure DevOps, right? Where you can refer the links to this document.
Yep.
Right? Do a screen model, right? So build it a comprehensive. Think about it now that you are taking it, let's say a patient registration model, right? You're taking it, refining it to enough so that somebody can implement it.
Yep.
Right? We have done it all bits and pieces. Put it in a single view where somebody can read through it. Just like you have the problem statement in one PDF, but one things will enable you to, like, it's clearly laid out what exactly it needs to be implemented. What is your requirements?
Yep. Now there are other tools exist, right? I think we talked about Jira as well. I'm gonna send you guys a video. You can watch it. You can follow through it. I think that should be okay, and I can get you guys access to that as well. Okay, so Jira video, you can watch it from home. If you have a question, bring it up. Basically, on Sundays or something, we can spend maybe clarifying it. But again, it's a similar tool like a DevOps. Okay, there is no other things. It's just a documentation part only. It doesn't have. It's very similar to DevOps, right? So that would be fine as well.
Other thing I would recommend, I know Birja, you were trying to do it, and like Jayashree, you had some challenges. That there are tools that I send you, like it's a Miro. Take a diagram, build a process in there.
Yeah.
Right? The more experiments and the comfortable you will get with the different tools, because tools at the end of the day are tools. What we taught you here is the mindset and the process that you need to follow, right? Now, before you go for any of the jobs, interview or anything, right? You need to at least feel comfortable with one of the tools. Feel comfortable with end-to-end process. Because when somebody says, how would you go about this? You should be able to articulate it, the process, how would you go about it? Right? And that's where I think it's the 8-step business analysis process that I covered today. Think about it mindset. Take a problem and says how you would break it down across that. Same thing goes for the day in our life of business analysis. Make sure you're comfortable doing all of those activities. Becomes almost a muscle memory. That's what, when you know it, hey, if I can effectively do it, then I can actually talk to somebody and explain them how would I would go about doing it.
Okay. So that's the next steps, right? So I just wanted to highlight that basically, and so Sundays we will meet on Sundays. Now we'll meet next Sunday, but I'm out week after that, so we'll carve out a time on Thursday or something like that for that week. Okay, but after that it will be Sundays basically. So one week. So I think May 4th. Which one is
That's
next?
Sunday, May 4th is Sunday.
May 4th is good, right? So May 4th is good. But the week after that, that's Sunday 13th. That's where we'll cover a time for either.
You need to go to May.
Sorry, yeah, that's correct.
So you go.
All right, so May 4th is Sunday, that's good. So 11th, I'm not here in town, so we'll probably meet on one of the weekdays during that week. Yeah. But I want you guys to keep working through it, and so that we can review it for you guys. So from my standpoint, I think that's what it is now. As far as the resumes and other part goes, right? So we will work through that whenever we feel like you guys are ready, and you feel like whenever you are ready. Over there, we will work through the resume portion as well. And I'll send out few sample resumes, how you should be structuring and all those things. And it will be more like a one-on-one type of meeting, right? So it will not be like a class exercise, but I'll set up a time with you for the Zoom, and we'll cover our strategy based on your background, because everybody's background is a little bit different. So we'll have one-on-one for that. Yeah.
As I would stress it, right? I know the initial tendency is, hey, I'm done with the class, let's roll the resume and go to it. I want to make sure you understand, you need to be prepared for it, right? And getting the muscle memory and doing the regular practice is part of being prepared. Then you can go do it.
Yeah. And I think you guys are getting there. We have seen the improvement, right? The way you are writing, you guys are writing, I mean, it's getting there. It will never be perfect, but as long as you feel comfortable and we feel comfortable, and then I think you guys should be good from that standpoint. So, okay.
That's great, thank you.
More, go ahead, but before we wrap up, I would like you to see the work that I sent.
Oh, yeah. So we will review that. I mean, I just wanted to have quickly,
absolutely,
quick chat
absolutely,
here,
yes.
right? So what is the expectation for going forward? Because today is kind of like a technically your last session,
Yes, that's
but I don't want to leave you guys hanging, right?
thank you.
So we'll keep working on it, and we'll keep reviewing the work, because generally it takes about a month or two for you to get comfortable with this type of thing. So, any question from anyone? Kusal, Jayashree, or anybody, Girija, if you have anything. I know you guys are not in the classroom, so I cannot see what
Yeah,
you guys.
I'm not able, like, nowadays I'm going through like some hormone problems. So last 2-3 days I'm not able to even sleep. So sorry to, like, I was not able to attend the class, today's class. But as I said, like in Thursdays, like, can you please, like, whatever we did on the first week, what was the homework and what was your expectations? And like, we were not there. So like, again, I will request, like, for like first few weeks homeworks, can you share like this? It's not like correct or wrong, but something to refer, like
So
from
that's
your
where,
side.
so Jesse, I would suggest, because this is what we are reviewing here, that's what I
Mhm.
do in the real life. So
Okay.
create the mockups, we have the business rules as part of the stories, create the
Mhm.
criteria and be done with it. So that is kind of like so that's why I think hopefully that's helping you. Okay.
All the recordings are there.
Plus all the recordings are there as well, right? For
Okay.
you to take a go back and look at it.
Mhm.
I'm gonna send you one final playlist link, so that will include all the sessions. What
Mhm.
we but last couple of 2-3 sessions, right? It's pretty much like a 60%, 70% is pretty much hands-on. We are not covering much theory because there is not much theory. So, but you can watch a certain recording or whatever you feel like. I mean, from there,
Mm.
it's, I think you missed one of the important session.
Yeah.
A process map. So I'm not sure whether you have gone through that, because that part was very important as well. How do you come up with the story maps, process flows, and those things?
Yeah.
So
I watched the video for 2 times, but it is like I need to work on that.
yes,
So
yes,
is it okay if I like from the beginning, if like how you say, like you can come up with your work and you can share and ask for the, so I would like to do that for the like all my homeworks. Is it okay?
yeah. I mean, so come up with that, and Sundays we can review that, right?
Yeah.
Um, process. So yep.
Yes. And the Miro, the last the thing which he shared, it was really useful yesterday. Like I did like half of the work. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no worries. Yep. And I think all the videos, plus I'm gonna send you some supplemental videos, one for the SQL as well. I'll send you one video so that it helps you. If you wanna pick up a little bit on that, you can watch it. And I already sent you the Gherkin video. So
Mhm.
Gherkin is a deep topic as well, but at least you don't need to go that deep, but you can just focus on what you need from the standpoint, how do you even write it better way of acceptance criteria and so forth. So that way it gives you some more idea on that.
Okay.
Yep. So those are a couple of videos I think you can follow through. Everything else I think should be okay if you just repeat the videos what we have. So for now. Okay. All right. Any other question that you guys have? If not, then we can go back to the review process. I just want to make sure we review the work that you guys have. Anything that you want to review here, work-wise, we can certainly pull that up and work through that.
Yes, process and story map of last week homework.
Did you have that, Girija?
Yes.
You're
Yes,
good?
I've sent it
Okay.
to you.
All right, perfect. So you want, let me pull up Girija, see she can share, and then we'll review yours as well, right? And so Kusal, if you have it, I know you guys didn't attend, right? So
Right.
we just want to review anything, feel free to do so. Okay. But let's start with Girija. See what she got. So go ahead, Girija, whenever you're ready.
Yeah. So this is the form we are talking about, the mental health form.
All right.
Process. This is process map. So
Yep.
start, nurse logs in, click the initial assessment form. This is the form CEI.
Yeah, just give me 1 second.
No, there. The where you're seeing your screen, there are 3 dots next to it.
Right here.
The one above, the one above.
Oh yeah.
That one. Just say zoom ratio, fit to screen, fit to window.
All right.
And
Okay.
it should be fine.
All right. Yep. Can you scroll up later? So you are starting out there. You just go ahead and explain what process is there. So
Is the initial assessment form.
okay, so you have a title, right? Initial assessment form. That's the title. You probably want to put the title in.
Process map for initial assessment here.
Okay. All right. Okay. Sounds good. Yep.
Okay. So the initial assessment form has like section K till section K. So I just went one by one, like click the assessment form, then enter the name of the patient, name of the person who's filling it, and referred by whom and source of data. That is one section of it.
Okay.
And then enter the data of the patient, like the demographic details of the patient.
So just to identify different things, right? So if
Yes, sections, yes.
okay.
And there is one section which has a long 3 pages. So I just divided those sections into like 3. It's not just one thing.
Okay.
There is a section called adult and child and adolescents. So that
Okay.
is a little big. So I just divided into like 3 parts.
Yeah. If you don't
And
mind
then,
just zooming in because we cannot see really on the screen.
okay.
Yeah, it will go up now and okay, so this is the process more for initial assessment, right?
Yes.
So the nurse basically is trying to, so you are zooming into just the initial assessment
Just
information.
initial assessment, yes.
That's what you are trying to do. Okay, so you identify, if you go up now, start again from the top. Yep.
So shall I pull up the form so that it's easy for correlate?
Yeah, if you can do that as well.
Okay. So this is the one. I just wrote like sections.
All right. So this is the patient information, right? The top
Yes.
section, the patient. Now, one thing you guys want to think about, right? This is the initial assessment. When it happens? What point this initial assessment happens?
So while they are talking, when the home visit is happening, the nurse is talking to the patient or the guardian and the child.
Okay, and what point the patient information is created into the system?
What point the patient is registered? Because this is an initial assessment, right? They are not registering it. They are just assessing the patient.
Yep, that's exactly it is. But what point the patient is created into the system? So if you look at your process flow, right, the business process. So there is a previous process, which is initial patient registration process, right?
Uh-huh.
So you have that, then this process occurs. Once the nurse receives the medical information form,
Yes.
right, and they go through the registration process for the patient, and then they will go and schedule a visit for the patient
Yes.
or the initial assessment.
Uh-huh.
So now, why do they in your process? If you go flip back to your process flow diagram now, right? Okay, what is it they are doing with the enter patient data? Enter data of patient. What are you? Enter name of the patient, referred by, source of data. What are they?
It's here, this step.
I know, but this is a different form. They already have a patient exist in the system, right? Why do you need to enter information again for the initial assessment?
I felt that the patient is not registered in the system. The nurse is going to their house, like assessing the patient first, whether to register in the system or not.
Okay, is that you are assuming the patient is, how can they visit the patient without?
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
So what I'm asking is, so you need to think in terms of business process, right? So they already gone through the registration process, nurse is assigned at that point, they are trying to go and do the initial assessment for the patient. They receive the medical form, right? So that's what the registration process triggered. They received the form, they created a patient. Now they need to go and evaluate the patient information. Or assess the patient. That's the next business process that you have. Is
Okay.
it true or not?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so why they need to enter the patient information again into the system? So you need to think in that terms, right? Because these are paper,
Okay.
right? Paper would have a lot of different things, right?
Okay. Okay. Now I got it.
Enter that information again,
Yes,
that's
the nurse is already assigned to the patient to go and work in the field, right? So she knows the information about the patient. So
right,
that data information is not needed.
right? Well, so they capture it, but what action they will take it as part of your process.
Mm,
So
maybe
remember,
they check whether it's right.
well, they can check it, but then in order to enter into the system, this information, what do they need to do? They need to pull up the existing patient. Patient is already there. Why do they need to enter all the information again? That defeats the whole purpose of the
Yes.
system, right? So
Yes.
you would have a step for
Okay.
searching the patient, pulling up and then entering the assessment information for that.
Okay. Okay.
You understand the
Yes.
difference?
Yes.
Because what you have is based on the form.
Uh-huh.
So now they are probably putting the name of the patient, but they already know who the patient is, right?
Mm-mm.
So that here, because this happens within the system, so they need to go search for the patient and then create a new or update the assessment, whatever you are doing.
Okay. Okay. So these are the sections I have here.
Okay, again, I'm not done with the top portion yet. So just the sections are sections, right? So here
Yes.
again, same way, what you had for creating a new patient versus updating existing patient. You should have something similar for assessments as well.
Okay.
Are you trying to create a new assessment or update assessment?
That's a new assessment.
Okay, so you need to identify that in your process flows.
Okay.
Trying to do there. Is it a new assessment
Uh-huh.
or existing assessment you are trying to update?
Okay. New assessment. So I need to enter here. It's a new assessment.
Well, you need to identify in your process flow what are the things you are doing, right?
Okay. Okay. I just wrote, I do not know whether it's right, but I wrote like every section, enter first section A, section B, and then section C.
Those
Because
sections are fine. I mean, I am not worried about those sections, but those important steps you are missing.
Okay.
Because you have the process flow, you should identify those things.
Okay.
If the patient is not there, you're gonna have,
Mm-hmm.
but you need a patient, right? In order to do any assessment, right?
Uh-huh.
Enter any assessment into the system. So you need to see the patient, find out who the patient is, pull up the patient information, and then do the assessment.
Okay.
Can the assessment exist without a patient? It cannot, right? Assessment exists without patient, so you have to have a patient first.
Okay. So I'll make sure that this is.
So you need to include a search patient flow as part of, right? Because you need to have search patient. If the patient is there, you need to pull up the patient and then create either you are creating a new one or updating a existing assessment.
Existing one, okay.
So, and other things I'm not worried about because you identify the sections, you need this. But the part is missing.
This part, the first few steps are important. Okay.
Yep. You need to have those because those are important ones.
Okay.
Everything else, I mean, you have probably 10 different sections, which is perfectly fine. Those are data entry updates or creating new ones.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Okay. Then all the sections, then I wrote like.
Sections are fine, and you ultimately you're gonna save them, right?
Yeah, I had one thing. It says in the form, it says at last like signature of the staff or entering the thing. So I'll just write the ID of the nurse or nurse name with title. Is that
So think about digital, right? They know who is entering the data, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here,
So,
I mean, they can, you can say system will capture the information about the data, the person who is entering or updating the assessment.
okay.
Because the system knows who is logged in, right? Who is working with it.
Uh, so this one, the staff name, it's already known in the system. The date, do I need to enter the date?
Yeah, it will capture the date as well.
Okay.
System can do all these things, right?
Okay.
So you don't need to manually enter all this different information.
Okay, great. So that's it. I understand this part.
Yeah, make sure you first few steps are important because that needs to go in your flow.
Okay.
Other things I'm not worried because those are different sections for data entry.
Okay.
And so,
Mm-hmm. Okay, got it. Thank
do
you.
you have anybody has anything different? What he has process flow wise? Did anybody else created process flow? Okay. So from the
I added the when starting the initial assessment, having the source of data as well, and then that the identifying data will be pre-filled or auto-filled based off the identifying data that's already present in the patient profile.
okay, can you pull up what you have, Kuso, so that
Yeah.
we can see what you have? I mean, you can represent different ways, but let's just see. Yeah, okay. All right, so the login here, go ahead, if you can describe.
Yeah. So they'll log in, it'll display the dashboard, they'll search the patient, and they'll once they come to the patient, they'll open the initial assessment.
Okay.
They'll put the source of the data for the initial assessment, and
Well,
then
can I, so what is source of data? What are you referring to there?
yeah, so I'm referring to where they're getting the information for the initial assessment, whether it's from the patient itself themselves, whether family or any collateral sources.
Oh, I see. So you're just identifying, but I think in the form, right? So you should
Mhm.
stick to the form. I'm not sure if you need that step, right? Because
Okay.
process flow within the system,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Now you can ask business, I mean, do we want to identify the source of data? I mean, it's always gonna be patient, okay? I mean, they have to evaluate and go through the assessment, so.
Right. Okay. Okay, and then they'll review and confirm the auto-filled identifying data. And I'm curious whether we would need the identifying data in the initial assessment since it's already on the patient profile. So that might be something that may not be needed and can be taken out of that flow as well.
Yeah, so I think at the top section you are referring to, right?
Right.
At the patient and pull up the information, they should already have demographics information about the patient, right? You have review and confirm, which is okay. They can update it. They are going through the process. They can,
Okay.
right? But but I think the flow wise is good. Okay, you are searching a patient, then only thing is you need to identify here, are you upgrading a new assessment or creating a new one? You are saying
Okay.
it's your assessment, but you can split it out a little bit further, that part. Whether they are
Okay.
or updating the existing assessment for the patient.
Okay. So even though I have initial assessment there, they can still go in and update the initial assessment. Like if they started it, didn't complete it fully, I need to identify just that, whether they are starting a new initial assessment or updating existing initial assessment.
That's exactly what it is. Yep.
Okay. Perfect.
Yep. But then after that, it will flow into your green box. Whether they're creating a new one or creating, then the data remains same afterward.
Okay.
So,
Sounds good.
yeah.
Okay, and then yeah, just after that is all the sections of the area being filled, and then submitting the assessment.
Yep. That is correct. So, yep, so either opening a existing assessment or creating a new one, that's the only thing missing, I think. Other than that, I think you have pretty much the flow wise.
Okay, so
Anybody has any question on this one? Did you guys understand, right? I mean, Jayshree, I mean, you, since you haven't, does it make sense to you? I mean, because.
Actually, I did the simple one because I had a doubt on my form. Can I share mine
Hang on a second.
after this? Yeah.
Let's finish. So Kusal, if you don't mind, pull that up and let's finish your
yeah, I'll
thought.
pull that back up. Yeah.
Sana, you have a question?
No, my question, I was just.
Hard
trying to
stuff
think-
is send it to you, we want to review that.
Oh, okay,
Not
okay.
the question.
All right, gotcha.
My thing was just that, oh, this should be the same format like you suggested to Christian, right? It should be
Yeah,
initial or this, it's just that adding that box and you still follow the same chain.
Yeah, you still follow the same chain because doesn't matter, they're gonna have access to the same function, right? Or kept updating the information. They can still do all these things, but then you branch out.
Sure.
So but you have to create different stories for creating versus updating.
Thank you.
So would we, when we're doing that, would we have like a like an if scenario, like if they're doing this or that, or are we just specifying
So essentially,
whether it's
there are multiple ways you can do it, right? If your next steps are gonna be same irrespective of whether I'm updating it or I'm creating new initiatives, right? Then you should just have one process box.
Yeah.
To say that
Okay.
you have to pick that. Now, if you're doing it a different activity based on whether it's a new or
Yeah.
updating it, then you will have a decision block.
Yeah.
That separates those two flows.
oh, okay.
So
Okay,
you can
that
do
makes
either
sense.
way. You can put a decision box or you can just update the description. Yep. Yeah, decision box, I mean, I would prefer decision box if you put it in the same flow, which is
Right.
okay, I mean. Otherwise, yep,
Okay, sounds good. So decision box, and then it'll move on to the next depending on what decision is made.
That's it, both
Yep.
going to that.
yeah.
Okay,
Or
perfect.
you can have two separate flows, basically. It's with the separating information, so
Right.
Yeah.
Either one is okay.
either one is fine, yeah. And because remember, this is, you're gonna sit down with the user, as long as you are able to explain what you have, right? These are steps, and users will say, yep, this is how exactly I would do the work, which is fine. And then you're gonna move on to the next step, which is creating the stories and basically based off of these boxes. And story map, coming up with the story map. Okay.
Okay, great. Sounds good.
All right. Okay, let me pull up Sana's here quickly. For since we are talking about the same thing here, so let me just quickly do that.
It was the-
So you want me to pull up this
No,
one or?
No, the first homework.
Okay, homework. Mock-up.
Down below that, yes, please,
Yeah,
thank you.
okay, gotcha. All right, so let me go in here. Okay,
So this was my homework for the Thursday thing that we were on.
okay,
The first one is the initial assessment as is format, so I had 3 lanes,
so this is a business process, right?
yes.
This is a process you
This
have,
is
okay,
for the initial assessment work.
okay,
So then I also looked at your, I listened to your video and all that, and I thought it went in the same zone,
sure,
which you were
sure,
explaining.
okay,
But primarily it starts with assigning a patient, checking for the details,
Okay.
taking the forms because this is the manual process.
Yep.
And then visiting the patient, followed by patient assessment.
okay,
And then you're recording or encountering whatever way that they were.
okay,
And then either they need a referral for a BCMH approved provider, if the need as it demands it. You're capturing daily activities, this is from the nurse's perspective,
okay,
the time travel distance, and then you're submitting the timesheets.
Yep.
And you're ending the process.
okay, so referral for BCMH approved provider. And what, is there anything else afterwards?
Then you're capturing daily activities, time travel.
Okay, so
Because
that's
if
a
you
time submit time sheets,
Yes, time sheets.
daily activity, right?
Because
Yeah,
the
okay.
two things I was focusing on is the initial assessment and the daily activities.
Okay, so this one is initial assessment, right?
Yes.
As is. So assign a patient, Okay, so county will do that, right? So county will do that,
County is doing that, assigning a patient.
then check patient details, right?
So the
Public health
is doing
nurse,
that.
take forms for assessment, visit the patient,
Mhm.
right? Then you have patient assessment completed. So you are showing basically parents or patient,
Correct.
basically, right?
Yes.
Parent patient assessment.
Mhm.
Okay, so record patient assessment encounter form, refer for BCMH approved provider. Now, why do you need a referral for BCMH approved provider? Because this one is already done, right? I mean, are you saying for the diagnostics?
Yes, because sometimes it happens, right? There are multiple.
For treatment, they will need a, or something like that.
So there has to be some follow-up action from the nurse's perspective, right? When I'm
Okay.
assigned, I will go there. So I was just thinking from a nurse's perspective that she would either do a doctor thing for her daily activities as well,
Mhm.
or then she will have timesheet, she will have mileage.
Yeah, so capture daily activities, you have it, but I'm just not sure about that, whether you need this form, this referral for a BCMH approved provider. Okay,
Okay.
because that's something, yeah. I mean, if you have it, you want to confirm with the business.
Okay.
Is it a valid process or not? And they will say, and I would say no, it's not a required step here or not a valid step here.
Okay, got it.
Because that's something, but all our focus is on the assessment,
Uh-huh.
right, process, and that step doesn't belong here.
Sure.
Okay, there might be a different things they evaluate, and then they come up with, oh, does it, the guy needs referral or not?
Right.
Okay, but other than that, yeah, capture daily activities, submit timesheets, and the process, right? So the format is good. I mean, you have the right steps here, right? Basically.
And the
Now-
bottom is 2B with the system in place.
2B is that's what, so you came up with the 2B now, so let's quickly talk
Sure.
about it.
I assign, the county starts,
Okay,
it assigns the nurse.
Mhm.
So then the nurse is logging onto the PHN system.
okay,
So then the PHN system is validating, login and displaying the data to the nurse.
okay,
And then she or he will check the daily schedule.
okay,
So then they will, the PHN system will display appointments.
all right,
The nurse will check patient details, like where is the appointment, the time, the location, all the other stuff.
okay,
And then they will visit the patient, interview the caregiver patient.
okay,
Then there'll be patient assessment. Counter from the nurse's perspective.
okay.
And the system here will validate entry and store and save that data for the patient.
Okay, so now patient assessment, where do they record patient assessment?
An assessment form, form.
I know, so you mentioned the PHN nurse does that, right?
Uh-huh.
They completed the assessment, but nurse will have to capture within the system. So record patient encounter assessment form, basically, right? So they
Mhm.
complete at the, in your, so nurse will visit the patient,
Mhm.
they will capture all the information into the assessment form, paper
Yeah.
form.
Correct.
They come back to the county. Now, that assessment needs to go into the system.
But then, Harshal, if the system is updated and they have laptops,
Mhm.
why would they have manual forms? Shouldn't they just feed in like we go to a doctor's place?
Well, so that's the question you need to ask business.
Okay.
Because that, if they feed in there, is it connected to the county system? Because that information is on the laptop, right? How does it sync back up and all those things? So that's a conversation you want to have. So here, but again, the information needs to, okay, let's go back. Okay, so this information ultimately needs to go to the PHN system.
So the way my thought process was that I recorded the patient encounter or assessment form
Okay.
data. Like, for example, if I was on a laptop or whatever, I
Sure.
recorded as a nurse. Then from the system's point of view, system is validating entry and storing and saving the data.
No, but from laptop, how it is getting into the system is different servers.
So
That
generally,
information has to go somewhere.
unless they are connected via cell network or something else, right?
Okay.
So that's a conversation
But
you
if
wanna
that
have.
is the case, right, then I would anticipate it is that, why do I need a separate form within a laptop?
Yeah.
Why am I not logging directly in PHN and entering information there?
So this box, right? Well, all we are saying is this box
Mhm.
needs to belong to
To
the
the
PHN
PHN.
system. How they do it, doesn't matter how but nurse will enter into the PHN system, right?
Sure.
That's what you are saying here.
Yes.
So this box needs to be here. Okay, instead of putting in the public health nurse.
All
Okay.
right.
And then from this box to this box, validate entry and save the information, which is fine. I mean, you can separate out or just have one box, recorded patient information. That's okay.
And then the referral part is kicked out.
Yeah, the
This
referral part is,
yes.
yeah, that's a different part. So,
Then she logged, so they logged travel time distance.
so you have it here, right? So log here. So instead of that, you can directly do arrow from here to here, right? Yeah, as well, because this box will go away, right?
Yeah.
BCMH1.
Yeah.
So then you simply say, because nurse is there, she will log it right in the system.
Okay, then the system will route the timesheets for approval.
Yeah,
It will collect data including distance for mileage calculation.
yep.
And that is it, then the patient.
Yeah, you don't have to log off, because log off is no, regardless, you have to, right?
Or they could just simply access the information.
Access it.
Right?
Yeah,
They
yeah.
don't require it.
And
So,
that is-
right? So this one ends. Now,
I
what
would
you need to
just
do,
Put it up there, instead of that, I would just put that in whatever activity you're doing,
right, right.
instead of log out.
Yep. So now you know you have to blow up this box, right? Record assessment,
Mhm.
right? Following the process that Kusal showed,
Yes, yes.
or Girija had something similar as well.
If you move down, does that, because I remember you saying blow up, so I highlighted that part.
Okay,
I was also referring to what Dilip had taught, like the custom creation.
sure,
And,
sure, yeah,
So based on that, what I put is the user persona was the PHN nurse.
okay. So this is the one, right? Blue one,
Yes,
this is what
yes,
we are
the blue
referring to
one,
here.
yes.
Okay,
So how it came to that, the top part just shows a brief of how we got here. So they log into the system, then if you scroll up slightly, yes, the main umbrella.
okay, so here, blue
Yes.
box, okay,
So they logged in and they got to the dashboard. And
okay.
within the dashboard, of course, there were a lot of stuff going on, but I highlighted. the-
Okay, so where is the dashboard step here? So user PHN
So
nurse.
This is the page flow that you draw. Or is this a process?
No. But when it says zoom in, so I went to your custom creation, you had done, like, for example, if it's login, then you said these are the criteria, say password, fail
Right,
login,
right, so those are the page flows.
okay.
Those were not process flows.
So here, simple term, right? So what we are asking is,
Mhm.
so what really happens here, right? In the nurse. Now, in order to do that, you are logging in, right? Activity wise, so you are logging in,
Got it.
and then you might be, what you are saying is going to the dashboard.
Mhm.
And then from there, what they are doing. So you need to highlight those steps.
Okay, so let's go down and I'll show you what I've
Yeah,
highlighted.
yeah.
And then if you want to zoom in, please.
So PHN nurse, right?
Yes.
So you have login, so this one needs to be highlighted in this case, right?
Got
I
it.
mean,
The other steps, yes, makes, yes.
Uh,
size dimensions.
I mean, I would keep it separate, but if you wanna keep it like this, is fine, but otherwise. You can just show PHN nurse login and then do initial assessment or go to the dashboard, right? From in here to login, then to dashboard, and then to initial assessment.
Okay.
Now, initial assessment, what we talked about is they need a patient.
Yes,
So
they
you need to have a
search-
patient,
So
right?
search view patient,
Yep, yep.
and they search by name, date of birth, or social security number.
It doesn't matter what they search, but they need a patient, right? Because that functionality is separate. How they get to the actual patient information, because we don't want to repeat, right, every time. What happens is in this scenario is, let's say you are using the same diagram
Mhm.
for different processes as well. Now, if something changes, you have to go and update all the diagrams,
Mhm.
right? So you want to just focus on what happens with the assessment.
Yeah.
If there's another process, you want to start with PHN, log in, and then go to the dashboard and maybe do reassessment. There is another process, reassessment, right? Which happens every 6 months.
Mhm.
So then they will not come here, initial assessment, but they will go to the reassessment.
Yes.
Enter a new assessment at that point or update existing reassessment. Right? So
And here will the confirm appointment and all that still be a part of this?
no, it will not be, right? Because confirm update, those are manual steps. Nothing to do with the scheduling, right? You are just focusing on the assessment side of things.
So then just the start from visit patient.
Not even visit, right? Because remember, this thing, what we are talking about is this box is being within the system. When they are dealing with the system, they are already done all this work, visited patient, they filled out assessment form and all those things, right? So that step doesn't come here. That's part of the business process here, visit patient, but you are not worried about that. You're worried about what they do in this record patient assessment and saving the information. Those are the only two boxes you have on your diagram.
Mhm.
That's what you're gonna focus on here.
So then I'll rework on it and just highlight on those specific.
Yeah,
fields.
I would say just create like something similar to what Kusal had or Girija had, right? So one simple diagram, yeah, so that it doesn't confuse,
Sure,
basically.
sure.
Now, again, you will need whether they are working with the new patient, new assessment or
Or-
anything existing one or something like that. That's something you need to add that in here. Yep, and then blow out all the different sections, right?
Yeah.
And go from there.
And then the bottom one had the to-be process mapping.
Okay, so wait, so what this one was, as is process? This is the as is I'm not sure what this diagram is then now. If you are telling me, no, this is the story map.
Page flow.
This is the story map, right? This is the story map.
This one is story map, the
Yeah.
blue one is a page flow.
Yeah, yeah.
The top
Okay.
two are the process.
All right, okay.
Page.
So your story map will change a little bit, right? Based on what the page flow, because you need to add. So you have search patient. Again, I would focus on what is for initial assessment.
I don't know why I kept thinking you asked us to do the daily activities for the nurse and the initial assessment.
Yeah, but those are separate things, right? There are two
So
pros.
you can, so you will need a separate one. For
Yeah,
the-
separate for daily activities, separate for this one. Now, business process remains same. Okay, but it's fine. You stored in the same process. But then this page flow will change for each, both.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and the stories will be different, right? Because
Yes.
stories are daily activity, they do different things versus initial assessment.
Sure, then I'll rework on it based on.
Yeah, so I would get rid of the encounter and other things because right now you guys are not focusing on that, just focus on what module you're working on and
Yeah.
list out all the
But they would
stories.
still be about the daily activities if I were to separate it out, correct?
So you will have a daily activity tab, right? Here,
Yes.
what you have, daily activity, what stories you will have as part of a daily activity.
Okay.
And that comes back from you need to have a flow for daily activity.
Right. Think
How they
about
capture.
logical grouping.
Mhm.
Daily activity will group it in one place.
Mhm.
Initial assessment will group it in another,
Yeah.
patient registration another
Yep.
group. Those are three groups, right?
Yeah.
Now, in the big story, my big flow, you will show all of them
Yeah.
together, right?
Yeah.
But right now, we are just
It's just
zoomed in,
only-
focused only on this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sounds good.
And technically, you can have the epics created for each of these
Each one.
patient encounter, search patient, all these things can be part of the
I keep
epic as
imagining
well.
back of it for me,
Yeah.
but Then
Yeah,
a system would have.
yep, that's correct. So,
So Harshal, now if you could quickly go to the other email, I'll quickly go through the mockups that I've created. From the email, the one that I sent to you.
sure. Which one?
The second one, please. Yes, the one that, yeah.
Wireflows, okay. Gotcha.
So this was for my trauma and substance use assessment. I was doing section E.
Okay. So history of trauma, so how would they save it? Are you
Yeah,
providing
my
the,
point is I've written in the discussion in the Azure Tape. I forgot I was doing all that. I forgot the save and the next or
Yep,
something.
yep. Yeah, because you need a way for save the information. Now, you can just put simply save button here, or talk to the developer and talk about basically how they will implement this thing. They might say, oh, we're gonna give them all the sections on the left side navigation.
Mhm.
Remember that one of the
Yes.
example I showed you, so they can go to the different sections and save individually or save it one big, but saving individually, which makes sense to me here. Now here,
Uh-huh.
when you convert something to a digital form, what does this specify? And this thing is
So
here.
accident specifies, so one of the fields was like, if you're in an accident, if you're selecting that,
Mhm.
then you need to specify what kind of accident.
I know, so but you need to have this as a box,
Text box.
not the lines in the digital format.
Think
Did
around
you-
how people will enter it, how nurse will enter that information. It needs a text box to enter it. The
Some
line
type of
is
box.
good because if somebody's filling it manually with a
Yes, I
pen,
was thinking about
that is
Yeah.
not what this is.
Okay,
When you do digital, you need to have
text box.
text box.
Text
for it.
box or multi-line box or something like that.
Also, one thing I want you to think about is, right, So you put a whole bunch of information. Now, on the paper, they do it. Now, think about visually, right? Is this organized? Like, it's when I see it, is all the boxes are unaligned.
Mhm.
All the check is there. I don't know whether the first section is separate than the second section.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
So think around visually appealing mockups also.
Okay.
That helps somebody to say, hey, is this a separate part of the information?
Okay.
Or is it all choices belong to one piece of
I
information?
see what you're saying. Okay.
Okay, so what do I understand from here, right? So they can either select none
Mhm.
or non-apparent.
Yes,
or-
non-apparent, yes.
So one of this choice. One of they can select one of this
Or multiple?
or one of this.
No, I think one of the business rule was, the next homework slide that I
Uh-huh.
sent was that, if they say that none are apparent, then that's okay, then doesn't matter what, they don't need to fill the other ones.
Okay, so that's where the importance of story comes in, because you wanna have story, mock-up, business rules, mock-up, business rules, mock-up, business rules. So that we can relate to it where, what you are trying to basically convey for as part of the stories.
Oh, that
Okay,
makes
So
sense.
that's why we encourage you.
If I select the first one, is it truly check boxes or is it a radio button?
Yeah.
Where I select one, then I can't pick a little.
Yes.
Radio buttons are one, basically they can pick only one. Radio buttons are one only. Checkbox, they can select multiple. And so
Oh,
forth,
that's
so,
a-
yep. So, yeah, so you wanna,
Think of this way. This is your communication tool with the development team of what needs to be built.
Mhm.
If it is not crisp and clear, interpretation could make it a completely different
Yep, yep.
implementation.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then, this was the second part.
yeah, so again, I'll go
Checkboxes.
back to the same thing, denies. Age start, okay, what these things are, right? Again, are these checkboxes or
No,
something?
these are, you can fill in information.
Yeah,
One of
so-
my business rule was that they could fill up to 100 characters.
Okay, so
And
here,
your text box there.
Okay.
So you need to
Okay.
use the I think Lucid Chat or some tools.
I did Lucid UI.
You did Lucid
Yeah,
UI,
Lucid UI.
okay,
But then probably you didn't select the right.
right, box here, so.
Yes, you're right.
Now, one of the things is, what if I enter this information, I don't check anything here?
If you, so my rule was that if you can put in information because you're not denying it, right? If you're alcohol, then if I deny, all the information is cleared. And if I'm not denying, then I will have to say, what age do I start? What age did I start?
Mhm.
How frequent am I taking it and all the other information?
Again, this is a perfect example of not repeating the information. What if I enter something tomorrow, change this list? You have to recode the basically form. UI. So what I would suggest is change it to the multiple.
Drop down.
They drop
What
down.
type?
All these are
Yeah,
fixed, right? Alcohol, they can pick one, so they can keep on adding alcohol, cannabis, sedatives. I mean, all the those.
They forget, like drop down, you select one. I thought of that process
Yeah.
in my head when I was trying to lay this out. But I said, if I'm a nurse, I'm talking to that person, I will drop down, I will select alcohol, for example, and I'll feed in all the information. Then I go to drop down. What if I forgot where in the list am I, like?
No, then they will select that, they will see the alcohol is filled out, then they will select the next one, cannabis. Okay, they are
So once
asking the
they
question.
save it, you show it at the bottom list that this one is already entered. Now
Yeah.
you go select the next one, right? And again, the key thing is that think around it. It is not going one at a time for everybody.
Yep.
Right? You're just asking, do you have this condition? Do you have this condition? Do you have this condition? And then filling only the one where they actually have the condition.
Yep.
Absence of not having it essentially tells it that I have only this three conditions.
That's it. So that you are not asking them to go through everything.
Got it.
So if they say they have only two conditions, then they will capture only those two conditions in the system.
Think it from a user's point of view.
Yeah.
The original paper forms were designed because they wanted, was filled by some patients, they didn't have all of the knowledge, they could not know it, and then. Like, when you go to doctor's office,
Mhm.
think about how many times you have to just check it outside. But when you go into the system, you just see it only when you have it,
Makes sense.
that's what you need to start thinking.
Yep.
All right, and then the bottom is just extra questions that were.
Yeah, again, this needs to be proper
The
text
box,
boxes.
got it.
And now, yes, no,
No,
yes,
this
those
was,
are
I was trying to get that fancy thing. that
Yeah.
was-
Toggle box.
toggle
Yes.
box, right? So you can have checkbox and then ask them to fill out if they
Right.
check something. You can ask them to force them to fill out.
Or you can do our radio box, right? And if they click yes,
Yes.
then make sure that there's a data into the other one. If not, it'll throw an error.
Yeah, those rules, yep, you need to discuss.
Last was a quick list of the rules for both these sections that.
Which one? The first one?
Email, yeah.
Okay.
It had a quick list of the rules that we went through.
Yeah, so write in the stories, right? You proper format, that makes it a lot clear. Plus you create different stories for different things. Stick in the mockups, business rules and acceptance criteria, all three
Okay.
together, right? So that way we can clearly see what is the section E and what rules apply
Got it.
and
Then I'll work it on.
yeah,
also DevOps
work in
and
the
I'll share
DevOps,
with you.
yeah, I would strongly encourage, I
Next
mean,
time.
yeah. So that's the only way you can improve. We can ask you to provide proper feedback as well.
Correct, correct. No, but
Right.
that sounds good.
Yep,
But this was very helpful for me to kind of gather my thoughts
right.
and understand as to
Yep,
where am I
yep.
going from what screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
No, that's fine. I mean, what you have initially, that's good, but ultimately everything needs to be in the DevOps. So, yep,
Okay, thank you.
all right. Okay. All right, anybody else has anything?
So I had one doubt. I'm going to share mine.
Go ahead.
So, for example, this is a drop-down box. I'm writing it, and if the nurse is not selecting any of this risk,
Okay,
so how should we?
show us the form, begin with the form, what you have on the form, then we can see, right?
Uh-huh.
See what they have.
This is what.
Okay, so suicidal risk, homicidal risk, self-mutilation, other risk-taking behaviors, right?
Uh-huh.
And comments and steps taken. So this is you are trying to digitize, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Now you understand this different sections, suicidal risk, that means there are 5 items. They're gonna check one or more for suicidal risk. Same
Uh-huh.
thing, suicidal risk, there are 5 items, they're gonna check one or more for that thing and so forth.
So if the nurse is not selecting any of this risk, so what do? Do they deny? Select deny?
No, so yeah, it's not a select denies, it's a denies. So remember how they are interviewing the patient. They're asking patient, basically,
Uh-huh.
certain information that are you suicidal? Basically, do you self-mutilate? Do you have a homicide? Do you have that basically? So they're asking questions.
If the patient is saying no, I don't
No,
have that risk.
Yeah, that means they will click on deny at that
Deny.
point.
Okay. That's
They
right.
have some idea, so they have some plans to do that.
Okay.
basically.
So here is also right the same other risk-taking behaviors. They are not selecting, so deny. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They are asking patient, interviewing, and then they are translating information and capturing in the form.
Okay. Got it.
Right. So that's how they interview the patient. Basically. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
I cannot. How do I take this out? This black one. I want to show my other tab.
Other tab. Which
yeah.
Click on whatever tab you want to show it.
Yeah. Just click.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that black tab was it. So is that right? You said like double click here. I mean text box here to enter the comments.
Yeah. I mean that's the normal way, right? I mean you
Okay.
have to put somewhere to free form way and to enter the information.
Okay. So this is how you need it. It's not just like the slides.
The how, again, remember, the how is, that could potentially change.
Yeah, developers will throw out your mockups. Okay, developer can throw out your mockup saying this is pretty junk. We're gonna just develop basically, but
Or
main
you
thing
have
is
a
the
UI
rules.
Designer who just takes
Yeah,
that.
I mean designer
and
will.
redesign the screen.
That's correct.
Okay.
So, but you need to have proper format to show to the business because that's and
So
developer
this,
different ways.
so this will be like a text box now. Am I
Yeah.
right? Okay,
Text.
great. Okay.
So
then
think
for the, uh-huh,
this way, if you're showing a mock-up, and if
uh-huh,
you're showing every field to the user,
uh-huh.
you have not done a good job.
Hmm,
Yep.
okay,
Think about it, the kids are playing on an iPad. Do you have to
uh-huh.
explain how to use it? Same
Hmm,
thing, the business rules in the screen should, when you're reviewing with the user, it should make that sense to them without explaining every little small little detail.
got it. Okay,
Yep. All right.
then the story map
Okay.
for the initial assessment. So it says the initial, you said like just
So
the
to
initial assessment.
go to the, so this is initial assessment story map. Okay.
Initial assessment story map, yes.
Okay.
So the thing is like user personalized PHN, daily activity, and coming to assessment. I did like search patient here because I already did it. So we are going, searching patient and selecting the patient and then coming to assessment, whether it is clinic initial assessment or reassessment, and then go from section A, section B, section D.
Okay. Initial assessment, reassessment, okay, or editing existing assessment, right? That's what you are.
Uh-uh.
Initial assessment or reassessment is a different process. Okay, don't confuse with the initial assessment.
Okay.
Okay,
So-
so reassessment is a different process. Now it might use the same form, but there is a different path to get to that.
Okay.
So
So I-
don't the initial assessment. So keep it separate, those two
Okay.
items.
Okay.
Yes. Now again, story maps, right? Ways a search, create new, ways update story, ways a search story, that's part of it, right? So just, whatever you have in the flow, you need to write that here. Those different sections will become your stories here.
Yes. And as I told you earlier, one section is little longer, so I divided into two,
Yeah, which
three.
is fine. You
Yeah,
can follow stories, which is perfectly fine. Yep.
Yeah, here, this one is little bit longer, so I divided into three.
Right. And when you write the user stories, actual detail stories, now tool, you will have mock-ups, business rules, acceptance criteria for each of these boxes.
Okay, okay.
Yep.
So at last, enter date and save.
Yep. Well,
Okay. So
and-
is it like, I just had a doubt. Once it is done, if, for example, the nurse is done with section M, it should be auto-saved, or like at the end of the form after completing section N, it should save. So should I ask the
So-
user?
you don't want to ask those type of things, right, to the user. So here, because this is a saving, you need it regardless.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna provide it to the each individual section, or you're gonna have, it's up to you, right? But it's ultimately information needs to be saved.
Yeah, once it's
Now-
each section is filled out, it's automatically saved. It's not like
But then
You-
you
you need to put a save button at the bottom of each section.
yeah, because automatic saves are not feasible for all the
Okay.
systems.
Okay.
Developers will come back and bite you on that.
Okay.
So it takes a lot
So
of work. for autosave.
Here, if I do this one, I'll put a save button here, just for,
Put it in the standard format, so you come up with where you wanna place the save button, make sure you have it save button on every screen and the
yeah,
same
at the
place,
same place.
same place. So typical standard is right, bottom right corner.
Okay.
Okay, that's the typical standard, bottom right
Mhm.
corner. That's what
Okay.
you wanna.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, Girija?
No, sir. That's all.
All right, okay, sounds
I
good.
have. Mhm.
Okay, so anything you have, Kusal, anything else?
No, I'm good.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I mean, I don't have anything else to cover today, right? I think we are almost at the tail end here, so let's take two. And I'm not gonna remind you guys, but we'll plan on 10 o'clock
Sure.
Sunday, right, next Sunday. And just tell you what are stories you wanna have, just make sure you have all three sections, mock-ups completed, business rules completed, that only belongs to that story. And the having acceptance criteria for the story. If you wanna put together a process diagram or anything for the different whatever we haven't reviewed here, then you can certainly do so as well, and work through that.
Okay, sounds,
All right,
thank you.
and I think we can wrap up then. Yeah.
So I had one doubt about my form digitalization because uh, it is like
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of repetitive information, and
Okay.
so like
Can you zoom in a little bit here?
yeah,
Just a screenshot of physical form.
Yeah, she should be able to zoom in. Yeah. Okay. All right.
so
Okay.
I think this is other form, section 8.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
wanted other form.
Can you pull up the page that you have question on?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead with the question. I think we can see it a little bit. It's fine. So your section G, medical history and current state, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it is like it has like so many things about
Yeah.
current and medical history of the patient. So how
Right.
I will do for in case of digitalization, what I will do, like check button or like my doubt is we are already using system, so the system will have the record. So like are we going to give like them the drop down, like these are the uh, diseases they want to click, like if it is a current or if patient is having the history, like a
Okay.
list of that, and just click, and then all will display like how we did that for the table for the major service details.
What do you think? I mean, what are your thoughts? How you would present to the business?
I had a doubt because like my thinking was we already have everything in the system, so we will just click like
But put that in the system.
Somebody has to create it, right? Remember, you are the BA, you are the one designing the system or capturing the requirement. So you have to come up with how you want to present and communicate
Mhm.
how it's supposed to be built. So I mean, does anybody have any thoughts on this form? How would you guys do it? I'm asking just everyone. If you can pull up the form, Jesse.
Yeah, I will.
So anybody has any thoughts? There is no right and wrong answer, okay? I mean, you can just
So
a similar way, I mean, who knows? But is there, yeah, go ahead. Kusal.
I think for this form, it may be important to keep the the check boxes, the current versus history, have a free text box for comments, significant family history, and then create like the table with medication where you can add and remove medications as well.
Yeah, I mean, because the why you wanna do that, right? Kusal, do you know why you wanna keep that? The but the check boxes?
Uh, because we want to be able to capture that information, whether it's a current problem or whether it's a history.
Right,
Um,
current problem, I mean, that you wanna capture, you have to capture regardless, right?
right.
What's the, why you wanna keep it same way? What's on the form here? Similar way, you need to have a mock-up. Because it's a ease of user, right? They can easily do check boxes, right?
Right.
Click something and enter it basically based on that. Now, if you do add here, those are add repetitive thing, right? Because there is a finite list here. If you do add here, they have to do extra clicks and saves. Okay, instead of that, for this one, it makes sense to keep it the way it is with and provide the convert to the digital format, similar way. With provide the other when they select other, right? On the screen, you ask them to fill out, show the additional text box and ask them to fill out other information. Now for medication, I think what he said is, Kusal said, if I interpret you correctly, you want to give the add, keep on adding basically in the list, right? Because that
Yes.
makes sense as well. Because we don't know how many medications, first of all, the patient has, maybe 10 medication, maybe 5, who knows? So we give them flexibility. So if they have only 2, we just enter name of the medication, dosage, frequency, why prescribe, how will it, and then save. And it will add to the, keep adding to the list. So there are a couple of ways to skin this thing, right? Yeah, other than that, I mean, comments are comments, and significant family history is again same way. It's just one giant text box, or you can ask them to fill out family history one by one, see if they have anything. Yep. So, Jayashree, does it make sense what we just discussed here?
Yes.
Okay. So, but you have to come up with a mock-up, okay? I mean, so
Yeah.
what you wanna, so maybe you wanna break down different sections, one story for each. You can do that, like medication, you might have different stories.
Mhm.
Top portion versus the comments and so forth. It's up to you how you wanna break it down,
Okay.
okay? All right, anything else?
As of now, all good. And may I know the next week work?
As I said, I mean, just pick one module and work through the stories, right? So if
Okay.
you haven't done anything for the initial assessment, I would say go with that, because it looks like you guys are a little bit ahead than other folks, right? So
Okay.
you know, pick the new stories from the initial assessment, document the stories, and
Acceptance criteria.
yep.
Okay. So I'll do that. Thank you.
And if you want to complete your I don't know whether we have seen the insurance or any other mock-ups, I mean, for medical application form either. So I would say, I mean, if you want to complete the focus on any medical application form part,
Mhm. Okay.
maybe just work on it. I mean, instead of picking something new. Complete all the different modules, like you haven't documented anything yet on those.
May I get that form
You have it, right? Everything
in
is,
the folder.
you have the folder,
in
right?
the folder?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So why don't you guys all focus on that,
Okay.
right?
Insurance form. Insurance form, story, and complete story with acceptance criteria.
Anything. So make sure you have process flow, how they do the insurance, come up with the mock-ups, rules, and all those things. Not just insurance, but whatever is in the medical form. Initial
Okay.
patient, right? That's what we are talking
Okay.
before you go to the assessment portion.
One more request. Could you please share the link that Mr. Dilip shared last week about the free tools?
I think I already sent you guys, right?
Yeah, it was in the chat also.
It
Yeah.
was in the chat, yes.
Okay. Maybe
Just
I
do
have.
a Google, I just did a Google, like it's free.
Okay.
Process mapping software.
Okay. Let me see if I don't think I sent to everyone. I mean, I just put it in the chat, I think, at
Yeah.
that point. So
Yeah, it was in chat.
I remember you said you talked about something about MIRO.
Miro is.
Miro
And
and
then you said.
Yeah.
And then.
yeah, but stick to one tool. I
Yeah,
think
just
that
take one tool, get comfortable with that.
Lucid Chat, I would say stick to that. You can always create a new account and just open 7-day trial.
I
That's
think it's Miro allows you
He
to.
already completed 2 new accounts. So over now.
Okay, just open an account, right? I mean,
Okay, yeah, I'll do
and stick to get familiar with one tool inside out, and so forth.
it. Mhm.
Yeah.
So Harshal, I did this with the like Thursday's homework.
Okay. Okay, can you talk about what you have? I mean, what
So
process? for-
it's like initial assessment, like how nurse will do that.
Okay,
So I was not sure about because I thought like mine is very simple. I just like do like this, but today you said like we need that existing patient. If the patient is existing, then add details to the assessment and save and submit and then end. And if it is like
so this
not
is
exist,
assessment.
sorry.
What is your business process? Because it's driven by the business process, right? So as is and to be and go from there.
Okay.
If you have business process, we can take a look at it and then go to this particular.
Yeah, I have that as well.
Yeah, so this one we talked about, right? You need to
That
update.
yeah, that day I showed you. So I was having doubt for this, so I wanted to ask that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so you need to revise the business process in proper format. Okay, so first of all, so you go and do that basically next week.
Mhm. Yeah.
So you those things because otherwise your flow may not be complete. Okay, whatever you come up with, if your process is not right,
Mm-hmm.
and okay, so here can you explain your what you have or how you see this thing working?
Yeah, it was like I thought I was wrong because mine is very basic. Like I'm thinking like the patient is existing or not. But now when you discuss with others, I
If you
think
can
it
start
is
at the beginning, see
yeah.
what this works, right? If you can just explain what you do from the beginning. So if I'm assuming, right, so this is a nurse process registration, right? Already is that registration or it's a assessment?
Initial assessment.
And then just start from the beginning, explain the boxes and go from there. Yeah.
So nurse will like start the process. She will log into the PHN. She will
Okay.
search the patient profile. If it is an existing patient, she will add like at home whatever like she will take the BP or I just do the shortcut like she will add all details of assessment and she will submit it and the process will end. If the
Okay.
patient is new,
That's what we discuss, right? So what we discuss is because the patient has to exist. That's why I mean it's important to have business process identified
mm-hmm,
because the patient searching existing patient or not, that's not the case here, right? Patient always exists. Then only nurse goes to the visit and do the initial assessment.
mm-hmm,
So what we talked about is patient is they are searching for the patient, they pick the patient, and then they will see if the assessment exists or not. And then based on that, they will do whether they will update the assessment or create a new one.
okay. Mm-hmm,
So patient, that's why I mean, you need to have initial registration process completed as well as the initial assessment process completed.
mm-hmm.
Because this one happens after initial registration. This process comes into play.
Okay.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
That's what I think with Sanas, Girijas, and Kusals basically as well.
Mm-hmm. So instead of existing patient, I need to check like if the initial assessment is exist for this patient and we are going for like we are
Yes.
creating a new or we are updating.
Yeah, and I think you have a registered new patient and those things, those flow will change, right? Because it's not registration, it's
Mm-hmm.
assessment. So,
Okay. Will
yep, and
change. Yeah.
how the boxes identify what information they fill out
Mm-hmm.
by those sections for your stuff.
Okay.
Yep. Okay.
And I try to do this. So is it correct or wrong? Like county, nurse, patient, PHN system. Because that day I did not like include the PHN system. So
Yeah, so PHN system, you don't have any boxes. So this is a as is process or to be process.
this is as is.
So then there is no PHN system, right? There is no box for PHN system in that case.
Mhm. So in to be there will be PHN system. In as is there will be not PHN system.
Correct, and plus you need to show the activities for what happens in the PHN, in that case, PHN system. What work nurse will conduct within PHN versus what happens outside the PHN.
Mhm. Yeah, as you discussed with the Shana's diagram.
That's correct, yep.
Okay.
So you just update for next week, so why don't you go and update,
Mhm.
basically, see.
I just want to check if I'm like doing it correct or not. So I will fill it. Otherwise,
So
just wanted to confirm.
if you complete those diagrams, right, with the PHN, without, I think what the recording as well today, so that gives you some idea where
Mhm.
things. And then we can take a look at it next week, what you need to tweak for your processes. It's okay to be a little bit behind, okay?
Okay.
But make sure you update it properly and we can review it from there. So, because I think even the initial registration anyway, I mean, patient registration, so it's perfectly fine.
Okay. Thank you.
This is the form we are referring as homework, right? I just wanted to share and confirm whether it's right.
Yeah,
This is the
yeah,
one, right?
yep, that is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, you guys haven't wrote any stories for any of these things, so let's,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
Properly document, come with the mock-ups and everything, for this one, so.
Okay, thank you.
Alright. And I'm not gonna say divide and conquer, let's finish up the all four stories for everybody, so that you understand how this thing fits together end to end.
Well, it'll also give you a perspective of how others are doing it and what.
Yep,
is
yep.
needed.
Well, how you are doing it, everybody gonna do it a little bit differently, right? So that gives you some idea.
Different.
Yep. So. Anything else, anybody online?
So today's homework is we have to work extra on that MF form, all different sections, user stories as well.
So initial registration, so not the homework, okay? I'm not gonna say you finish the homework now.
Mhm. But it's
Basically,
like work we have to complete, right?
how much time you spent and what all we are saying is work on the initial registration module. Let's finish that up first. And let's review the work next Sunday. Yep. Okay, so no Saturday, no Thursday classes, okay? No more.
Okay.
Only Sundays. Yep.
Okay.
All right, then I think we can wrap up for the day if you guys don't have any other question. Then we'll see you guys on Sunday, 10 o'clock.
May 4th at 10.
Yes. May
Okay.
4th.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, thank you guys. Yep,
Thank you.
all right.
We have to stop before we.
Stop.